This inquiry was presented by me, Tanya Beckett, produced by Emma Ford, researched by Matt Tolson, the editor was Louise Clark, and the technical producer was Richard Hannaford.
That was the inquiry from the BBC. I'm Saroja Coelho here on CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm R.C. Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live in downtown Winnipeg on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. And hopefully you can see out there this morning because it is certainly foggy. Look at that overhead shot from the top of our CBC studio at 541 Portage Ave. This is coming if you're watching on YouTube this morning. Lots of fog. I mean, the tops of the buildings are not visible at all, even in your residential areas. Now, we're not under the fog advisory zone right now. There's some photos now we're showing you of some of those foggy streets in Winnipeg. But if you're around Gimli and in other parts of Manitoba, you do have a fog advisory that's actually been issued. For our day-to-day, mainly cloudy, high 24. Thanks for being here for the Wednesday show. Corey Funk is here directing and covering your commute. Brad Lillies is here behind the controls of YouTube, our producer of our live stream. And Abby Adiyemi is here also, our senior tech. He covers weather on the air, so we'll talk to him after 6. Heather Wells is back. It's 2 minutes to 6 a.m. and she's here with our news headlines. Good morning, Heather.
Good morning. Well, the campaign manager for the Manitoba Progressive Conservative re-election campaign in 2023 met with provincial officials about a project that paid nearly $3 million to a company she co-owns. CBC News has obtained draft meeting minutes that contradict earlier claims Marnie Larkin played no role in the project that paid her firm. So we'll hear about that. And a bit of a traffic note early this morning. Right now, there is a transit bus that apparently jumped the curb on Osborne and is in the grounds of the Manitoba Legislature. It appears no one was hurt. It appears the bus driver was the only person on that bus. I was just talking to police, and they expect that scene to clear up very shortly. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
In the program today, we are in the first hour of the show going to be talking about people that are going to fill downtown Winnipeg in their best costumes. Not because of Halloween. Comic-Con is coming up, so we're going to talk more about that in the first hour. A bit of fun. In addition, we're going to hear from leaders of a new campaign aimed at keeping teen girls involved in sport. It's been a conversation we've had before, but again, a new campaign needed because those numbers need to improve. And then later, we will be joined by a member of the Canadian Medical Coalition Against Genocide. They've recently presented a letter to the Canadian government signed by over 2,000 healthcare workers around what's happening in Gaza.
Today on Q. If you could take a test that would 100% guarantee you'd find your soulmate, would you take it? That's the question Brett Goldstein poses in his new movie, All of You. Brett will be here to talk about that and his role as Roy Kent in the hit show Ted Lasso.
But you swear all the time.
Yeah, and it didn't hold me back because I'm a footballer.
Q with Tom Power. This morning at 10, 10:30 in Newfoundland. And on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Idil Musa. Typhoon Gaza continues to wreak havoc. That is the moment a storm surge smashed through the doors of an upscale hotel in Hong Kong. It was battered by high winds and heavy rains overnight. Now Gaza is over mainland China. There, millions have had to evacuate. In Taiwan, the cleanup from the once super typhoon continues. At least 17 people were killed as the major storm hit. Reporter Philippe Leblanc is in Taipei.
The scale of destruction in eastern Taiwan has been far worse than anticipated, officials said, after a barrier lake burst its bank in Hualien County. Some geologists described the breach as a tsunami from the mountains. A bridge was swept away and streets filled with water and mud. Several people are dead and at least 20 others are still missing. The water level rose so fast that we spent the night on the second floor of our house, hoping to be rescued, says this woman, who was taken to a city shelter. The Taiwanese premier is calling for an inquiry into the disaster response to figure out why those areas had not been evacuated as the typhoon was approaching. The super typhoon has now been downgraded to a severe typhoon and is pummeling southern China, where close to 2 million people were evacuated in Guangdong, still recovering from another typhoon that hit just a few days ago. Schools, public transit, and most businesses were shut down in Shenzhen for most of the day, but the city just lifted its shutdown. Hong Kong has also been at a standstill since yesterday. More than 60 people were injured by strong winds and high waves that crashed on the island. Widespread damage is being assessed. The Southeast Asian nations of Vietnam and Laos are expected to be in the path of the severe typhoon tomorrow. Philippe Leblanc, CBC News, Taipei.
Canada's outgoing ambassador to the United Nations, Bob Ray, says the power of the organization is its ability to bring people together.
It's the one place where everybody comes. There's nobody else that has the convening capacity of the United Nations when it's doing its job well.
Ray also says Canada's ability to connect with other countries is its strength too.
That, I think, is a strength that we have always had, looking at how can we lead on Haiti, how can we lead on the issue of children in Ukraine, where can we pick our spots to be effective with other countries.
Yesterday, Prime Minister Mark Carney met with the interim president of Haiti. Canada has pledged $60 million to help that country fight gangs. Most of the funding is contingent on the United Nations supporting the U.S. plan to expand a police mission into a gang suppression force. While he was at the United Nations yesterday, Carney also met with China's second most powerful politician, Li Qiang, the premier of the State Council of China. It is a high-level meeting at a time when Canada and China are trying to resolve their complicated tariff dispute. Janice McGregor is in our parliamentary bureau. Janice, what came of this meeting?
Well, it was interesting. Last night, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre jumped on his social media, pointed out to his followers that once again, Carney had failed to secure an end or even relief from the tariffs that China had placed on Canadian agri-food exports in retaliation for Canada joining the American push to block Chinese electric vehicle imports. But while it is true that a resolution hasn't landed yet, there is definitely something in the air. When Carney's parliamentary secretary joined Saskatchewan's premier for key talks in China earlier this month, Scott Moe was suggesting that a broader strategy may be in play here that could include, for example, addressing China's energy security needs, offering it perhaps an alternative to Russian gas imports. Carney mentioned clean and conventional energy last night. He talked about Canada's expansion plans for liquefied natural gas, as well as, he said, a range of opportunities in agriculture and elsewhere.
We had very constructive set of discussions which built on earlier phone calls, which built on exchanges between our foreign ministers, exchanges between our trade ministers. I will expect at the appropriate time to be meeting with President Xi Jinping, but continuing this dialogue with the Premier.
Carney said his foreign and trade ministers would soon be traveling to China. There is a busy fall summit season coming up for the leaders. This is all to be continued.
So what are the risks in this?
Well, remember, there's language in the revised North American Trade Agreement that says Canada cannot finalize big trade deals with China without consulting the U.S. And that's where things get really sticky for Canada as it tries to balance the conflicting and competing concerns between its number one and number two trading partners.
Janice McGregor in Ottawa. Thanks, Janice.
You're welcome.
The Prime Minister of Denmark is in Greenland with an apology on behalf of the Danish government. It oversaw a program that forced Indigenous women and girls to be fitted with invasive contraception against their will. Some cases date back to the 1960s. An independent investigation has been documenting the abuse. Today's in-person apology from Danish and Greenlandic officials comes with a promise to financially compensate victims. More than 200 mayors across Ontario now have access to stronger powers. They allow mayors to make unilateral moves when it comes to hiring and firing department heads. It also allows them to veto certain bylaws. Some mayors are using those abilities a lot more than others. And as the CBC's Jason Vio reports, it's prompting calls to get those powers removed.
I'm so totally against the legislation.
Windsor City Councillor Fred Francis called it a sad day for democracy when Windsor's mayor used a veto to override a majority decision of council earlier this year. Those powers also give most Ontario mayors the ability to hire and fire high-level municipal staff and requires mayors to put together a budget to be debated at council. The province says the powers aim to tackle issues like housing and infrastructure more efficiently.
I think it's sidelined city councillors to the point that city councillors have never been sidelined.
Windsor and Toronto's mayors use their powers the most out of all big city mayors, a total of 82 times. Close behind is Ottawa at 81. And near the bottom is London, Ontario, where Mayor Josh Morgan issued 25 mayoral decisions. Morgan says he takes a more collaborative approach.
It's just not worth it to go down a combative path with the council when you have the ability to actually do some pretty good collective decision making.
A new study released this month anonymously interviewed 32 top administrators who overwhelmingly were frustrated or angry about mayoral powers. Stacey Hushin is with Strategy Corp, and she helped conduct the survey.
This is where you see that shift from CAOs as impartial, neutral, objective civil servants to serving in more of a political role as chief of staff.
In a statement, a spokesperson with the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing says mayors know their communities best and municipalities are expected to follow the strong mayor legislation. Jason Vio, CBC News, Windsor.
It was a big comeback for late-night talk show host Jimmy Kimmel. His show aired for the first time since Disney, which owns ABC, suspended it last week. It was over Kimmel's comments on the murder of right-wing activist Charlie Kirk. Steve Futterman reports.
From Hollywood, it's Jimmy Kimmel Live.
Jimmy Kimmel returned to late night to a 1-minute standing ovation. After the applause, this was Kimmel's opening line.
As I was saying before I was interrupted, I'm happy to be here tonight with you.
There was plenty of humor, but the most moving moments came when Kimmel became emotional. His voice cracked when he said he never meant to make light of Charlie Kirk's death.
You understand that it was never my intention to make light of the murder of a young man.
And there was even more emotion later when he talked about Kirk's wife, Erica, offering forgiveness to her husband's killer.
A selfless act of grace, forgiveness from a grieving widow. It touched me deeply. And
Kimmel did not ignore President Trump. He mocked Trump's comments about Kimmel having low ratings with a bit of irony.
But he had no ratings.
Well, I do tonight.
On a serious note, Kimmel talked about the freedom of speech and said comedians should not be targets.
The government threat to silence a comedian the president doesn't like is anti-American. That's anti...
On social media last night, Donald Trump lashed out at ABC for not firing Kimmel and hinted he might file a lawsuit against the network. Steve Futterman, CBC News, Los Angeles.
And that's the latest from World Report. I'm Idil Musa. This is CBC News.
Good morning, everyone. Well, hopefully you can see out there. We've got such a foggy day. Fog advisory in effect for parts of southern Manitoba does include Winnipeg. And once you try to look out the window, you'll understand why. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. More on the day ahead in a moment weather-wise. Let's talk about the month ahead, though, because Comic-Con is going to be filling up downtown Winnipeg. Fans are going to be, rather. So stay tuned because we'll tell you a little bit about that event, and we're going to preview some of the stars coming to town. In addition to serious matters, we're going to hear this hour about efforts to protect healthcare in Gaza. A letter signed by over 2,000 Canadian healthcare professionals calls for action from our Canadian government. So stay tuned for that. And on our medical column, you might have allergies. Maybe they're seasonal, food allergies, all kinds of allergies. But do you know what oral allergy syndrome is? It is different, but it still can leave your mouth tingling after you eat certain foods. Dr. Bardwaj will tell us about it. Right now, Heather Wells is back in our news center, and she's here with your day's news headlines. Good morning. Oh, Heather's just not quite with us yet. I'm just looking at the booth. Here she comes. While she's doing that, I'm just going to share a little bit about our commuter line because it is quiet. Corey's going to pop in a moment to tee up whatever we do know. But the number in the meantime is 788-3093. And now that Heather is in her seat, she's here with our headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba's advocate for children and youth is devastated to hear a young child in foster care was taken to hospital in critical condition, suffering life-altering injuries. Sherry Gott says it is equally upsetting. 2 foster parents face criminal charges. We're going to hear more response from Sherry Gott coming up. And the manager for the Progressive Conservative Party's 2023 election campaign took part in a meeting about a daycare project that resulted in a nearly $3 million payday for a company she co-owns. CBC obtained draft meeting minutes of that meeting, and we'll hear some more detail coming up from Bartley Kivas in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you very much, Heather. Now let's go to Abby Adiemi to find out what's up in the foggy day we've got. What did you notice when you're driving to work?
This feels like one of those sets for, sailors just sailing through the fog, and all I can hear is, what can you do? What sailor, what can you sing? It's just a sailor song in my head.
What can you do with a drunken sailor, people?
That's just what's coming in my head this morning.
I kept waiting for something creepy to come out of the wood. This is a perfect day if you're shooting a Halloween movie. I mean, if Comic-Con were on right now, this would be like awesome weather. Everybody floating through with their capes through downtown Winnipeg. It's really foggy.
More like Count Dracula.
Yeah, right? All right, let's talk about where this is affecting things and when it's going to clear later, right?
Yeah, there's an advisory actually in effect for parts of southern Manitoba. This covers the Pembina Valley region. We're talking about from Morden, Winkler, Altoona, all the way down to the U.S. border, and a whole chunk of the Interlake region, covering Gimli and surrounding communities. Visibility dropping to near zero at times. So if you're driving out there, you should be prepared for sudden dips in visibility this morning. And also look out for wildlife because they will be crossing at this time of the day. But across the province, we're going to see more like a warm and humid day. This fog in the south will gradually lift as we get deeper into the morning, and then we'll see sunshine in a lot of areas by the afternoon period. In Winnipeg right now, 13 degrees. We have dense fog blanketing the city. This fog will take its time to clear, but by late morning the skies will turn more cloudy, and then we'll see sunshine peek through later in the day. It warms up to about 24, 25 this afternoon, and it's going to stay humid, but it will feel comfortable, and then more clear skies tonight. Across the south, similar conditions. We're seeing 4 degrees to about 13 in most regions, and the fog is still in play. While up north, clear conditions, the powerful Flin Thompson, Churchill, temperatures between 8 and 15. But right now, Winnipeg, we are just around 13 degrees, and it's really foggy outside.
Yeah, it sure is. All right, Corey Funk, you biked in this.
Biked on, and I was kind of squinting my way through it kind of thing. So,
right?
yes, luckily, no major issues. But it is thick out there, that fog. Wowzers. In terms of the issues out there, we heard earlier about a bus kind of up on the curb. This is northbound Osborne, right outside the legislature. It's actually up kind of on the grass in the legislature. Heard from the police that it should be cleared soon, might even be cleared by now. But just heads up, there were some kind of emergency vehicles on scene tending to that. It might be blocking one of the lanes as they work to clear that. If you see anything else, though, going on, give me a call on the CBC commuter line if you have an update on that or anything else you're seeing. That number to call, 204-788-3093.
Can you name that theme? We're not playing it just because it's foggy, although that works too. We're, of course, hearing some of the theme from Lord of the Rings, and we're playing it because fantasy fans, as I alluded to, are looking for something precious. I shouldn't say it more evil. May soon find it at Comic-Con. The Pop Culture Convention will return to Winnipeg next month. So from Lord of the Rings, Hobbit Sean Astin is going to be here in Winnipeg. Also, A Clockwork Orange star Malcolm McDowell is coming to Winnipeg for this. The event's going to be full of familiar stars. Jason Rockman's up early and with us via Zoom. Jason is with Comic-Con, and he's here to tell more about this. Good morning.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. I always wonder how you guys attract the stars. Like, are they on circuits promoting things and you kind of know who you can get to come? Or do you start thinking, okay, I'm going to go for this person because they're always popular with the fans?
It's a bit of a combination of both. I mean, you do have some guests that are popular to con circuits, and they do, because, let's face it, as much as we love the Winnipeg Comic Con, it's not the only Comic Con in North America or in the world. And there's these events happening all over, and the fact that we have such a great one in Winnipeg is amazing. But there are certain guests that do con circuits. There's some where our programming department will just be sitting in a room going, who would be really cool to have? And then we shoot for the stars. So you never really know who's going to be there, but our programming department do an incredible job of getting just an A-list of guests. And this year they've really gone above and beyond. Of course, breaking the news about Sean Astin, that's just a huge one.
Tell me a little bit more about why Comic-Con resonates here in Winnipeg, and what panels you have planned for the discussions this year.
I think Comic-Con works in Winnipeg because there's a big pop culture fan base in Winnipeg. Being Canadian as well. I mean, I live in Montreal, but we do have winters that are pretty hard, and you guys have some pretty hard ones. Will Young sang about it, and Portage in Maine 50 below. So I think you guys are used to hunkering down and consuming pop culture. We all do in Canada, because there's just times where there's nothing to do but watch stuff or read stuff or participate in stuff together in warm places. So I think pop culture resonates big time in Winnipeg, and I think Winnipeg has the kind of fans that are really passionate, and we've seen that. This is our 5th edition, and fans just love the show. And ever since we started it, we see the response, and it just fuels us to bring the best guests we can, to have the best panels what we can. All of our guests do a Q&A, which is included with the price of your ticket. It's a 45-minute celebrities on stage. And it's fun. It's really fun, because you get to really hear stories from guests about maybe filming a certain movie they were in, or a TV show that they were in, and it's just really a once-in-a-lifetime kind of experience.
What if someone's never been and they just think, is that thing downtown where people walk around and wear costumes? You don't have to wear a costume, to be clear, but a lot of people do. Tell us a little bit about that aspect. If someone's listening and they think, I'd like to go, I love those movies, but I don't know what I'm getting into.
Well, so what you're referring to with people dressing up is called cosplay, and we do have a lot of cosplayers that come to the show. It is a big part of the experience, but you'd be surprised how many people come in cosplay compared to not. I would say probably maybe 15% come dressed up. So the majority of the people that come aren't in cosplay, but it just adds a whole other layer of fun to the show. I've seen some of the coolest cosplay in Winnipeg that just blows me away. So, people spend so much time making these costumes. So it's really one part of it. But I think if you're a fan of pop culture, no matter what you're into, you're going to see something that represents your fandom in the show or at the show in the exhibition hall. We have a massive exhibition hall where you can shop. There's an area where you can meet the guests. You can take pictures with the guests. There's just an opportunity to do so much fun stuff. And again, there's a lot of programming that goes on during the weekend as well. So it's just a great way to have a fun time, to maybe meet like-minded people that are into the same things you're into. And we're all big kids at heart. So a lot of the smiles that we see during the weekend are because people just are in touch with with their inner child, which is awesome. Are you a newbie, or when was your first Comic-Con, Jason? Oh no, my first con that I ever went to was in 2004. So I've been going to cons for quite a while, but I've been a fan of superheroes and comic books since, I'm 54. So I was into comic books when I was like 7, 8, and it wasn't cool back then. But now, the geeks have inherited the earth, and we're the best now. I don't even think it's kind of fun for all of us nerds to kind of have a place to go. I always say to my husband now, I'm like I don't even know, I didn't know I was a nerd. So I was sort of like all the things that I like and lean into and enjoy, and I'm down with all this kind of stuff too, and interested in it as well, and watch all the movies and everything else. I think that word is like outdated now, right? It is. I was just saying when we said it back there, I was just thinking, no, it's, and even geek. I think if anything, we're just fun. Yeah. Well, we own it though in a different way, and right? We're passionate. Yeah. I'm around your age, exactly. So I know what you're saying. I know why you're saying that, because back in the day, right, it was like, now look at us. If I came to school with comic books, they'd be like, "What are you doing? Someone's going to put your head in the toilet." Where can people learn more if they want to learn more about what you guys have programmed for Winnipeg this year? What's your website, or is it better to go to the social media pages? Well, if you can go to our website, it's comicconwinnipeg.com. I encourage people to get their tickets in advance because they do tend to go quickly, and it helps to avoid a big lineup the day of the show. You'll get in a lot smoother. And comicconwinnipeg.com. And if you go to Winnipeg Comic Con on any of the socials, you'll find us on Instagram, all those places.
Okay, awesome. Thanks very much for being with us this morning, and take care.
Absolutely. Thanks.
So you can check it out online, and Comic-Con Winnipeg coming up next month. Jason Rockman's been with us via Zoom this morning. Apologies, we had a slight issue with the sound there. His mic, he was having issues at his end there. But he's the official spokesperson for Winnipeg Comic-Con.
You treasure Tony Soprano.
What line of work are you in?
Waste management consultant. Adore Dexter.
Really? That's your answer?
And delight in Don Draper.
But what is happiness? It's a moment before you need more happiness.
But can the not good, the very bad, and the bad but not ugly actually sell you stuff? Advertising Antiheroes on Under the Influence with Terry O'Reilly.
I'm making some changes.
Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland, and on CBC Listen.
We've got a big musical weekend coming up with Breakout West and with the awards and all the musicians coming to town all through the weekend. So that's going to be really cool. I'm just mentioning that because we're already at Wednesday. So you want to make a date with your radio Friday. Up to Speed in particular between 3 and 6 is going to have some special guests, performances. And of course, through the weekend in Winnipeg, really busy. Dario Williams is going to be in town from CBC and nationally from his show. So it's going to be very cool. This morning in Winnipeg, weather-wise, foggy, 13 degrees. Brandon's clear and 6. Thompson's mainly clear and 8. There is that fog advisory, so careful, especially if you're driving, because this is Winnipeg, U.S. border region, also down to Kimmel. And the surrounding interlake areas as well. You know the interlake in Manitoba. You start dipping through some of those valleys, and that fog becomes a problem really fast. And it's thick this morning. So call us on the commuter line if you have to report something, 788-3093. Well, speaking of local music, the Brothers Landreth have a new album on the way. They've announced their 5th studio album, Dog Year. And here's one of the tunes from it. This is called I'll Drive.
Somewhere out there on the highway, baby, you can just stay home. But if you wanna roll your stone, I'll drive, baby, go and throw your boots on. All right, get your gone tunes on. All night, if you wanna leave it all behind, I'll drive, yeah. Hold tight to the white lines, chasing them headlights, kissing flip a car at the stop sign. Anywhere the wind blows, feet out the window, move a little closer if you don't mind. We can take it nice and slow, anywhere you wanna go. I'll drive, baby, go and throw your boots on. All right, get your gone tunes on. All right, if you wanna leave it all behind, I'll drive, yeah. I'll drive, yeah. I'll drive, baby, go and throw your boots on. All right, get your gone tunes on. All night, if you wanna leave it all behind. I'll drive, baby, go and throw your boots on. All right, get your gone tunes on. All night, if you wanna leave it all behind. I'll drive.
Brothers Landreth, new music from them. This one's called I'll Drive, Manitoba's own. This is from their 5th studio album that's coming out. It's called Dog Ear. 6:25 a.m. is the time right now. Well, let's move from the world of music to the world of sport. According to the organization Canadian Women in Sport, about half of girls drop out of organized sport by the time they're 17. That's why they've launched a new campaign called Girl Get Coached to change youth sport culture and keep girls involved. It's something we've looked at in Manitoba. So let's find out more about this campaign, though. Marika Vandergrift is with us. She's Director of Brand and Partnerships at Canadian Women in Sport. Hi there.
Good morning, Marcy.
So tell me a bit more about this Get Girl Coached campaign.
Well, we're really excited to launch this campaign. This campaign's really designed after speaking directly to girls across Canada about their experience in sport. It's really a rallying cry and a call to action for everyone to change the way that they approach sport so that girls feel more included and can truly receive the benefits for participating in sport.
And why don't they feel included now? Why do girls continue to drop out of sport so young?
Well, through our research, through the Rally Report, we hear directly from girls what those barriers are. And they tell us that the barriers are that sport was designed for boys and for men. And there's really not anyone listening to their experience in sport, whether it's court times or uniforms or practice times, whether it's a coach and leaders that are listening to them. And if they don't feel like they belong, girls are dropping out.
Do we know specifically what girls are asking for in terms of if they say no one's listening, what kinds of things would help them feel included?
I think just given the opportunity to hear from girls and hear from their experience and what they need in each specific sport. Every girl is going to have something different that they need, and every sport is unique. But there's a lot of things that we know that they need from what they tell us through our research. They need female role models. They need to feel like the coaches and leaders understand them.
How can, beyond coaches, parents and others directly involved in sport be part of the solution?
Well, they can head to keepgirlsplaying.ca. We have a variety of free workshops and webinars and resources and research available to support them on creating a more inclusive sport system in Canada. For sport leaders, that's changing the decision makers around the table to ensure that there's gender equity, making decisions for practice times, for teams, and the rest. For policymakers, that's applying an equity lens to the work that they're doing at every level of government. For parents, it's encouraging your girls to participate and listening to them and their experience and advocating for them and encouraging them to advocate for themselves so that they can change their sport experience. And for coaches, it's learning from the girls. It's learning from them of how to create a more inclusive sport environment that keeps them engaged and keeps them feeling like they belong. And for brands, big and small across Canada, it's investing in sport, whether it's investing in grassroots soccer teams or hockey teams or your local sports organizations, all the way up to professional sport. We need investment at every level of sport.
Is it right that often the blame is put on the girls? Like that they're, even young girls, that they're not as committed somehow, they're not as interested?
It's true. We hear a lot that it's they don't want to play, but that's not true. It is, our research shows that it's not about participation, it's about equity. Girls face unique barriers that boys don't. We can't assume one system works for all. So by designing sport for girls, we don't take away from boys, we're making the system stronger and more inclusive for everyone.
Canada, in the face of this, has had a few really big years in women's sport. The PWHL, of course, the Northern Super League, the WNBA expansion, all the success of our women's teams. What does it tell you about the future of women's athletics in Canada?
Well, the future is bright for women's sports in Canada. Even with the Rugby World Cup coming this Saturday, it's an exciting time to be a fan of women's sports, but also for that next generation. Those are role models. They can see themselves as professional athletes, and beyond professional athletes, they can see themselves as professional coaches or working within the sports system. There's great promise, and we hope at Canadian Women in Sport that we can turn that inspiration into participation and into keeping more girls in sport.
All right, Marika, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Marika Vandergrift, Director of Brand and Partnerships at Canadian Women in Sport. Your news is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it's foggy, 13 degrees, bit of a sneaky fog again today. We're expecting it to dissipate a little bit later this morning, starting with clouds, clearing later, and 24 is our high this afternoon. The campaign manager for the Manitoba Progressive Conservative re-election campaign in 2023 met with provincial officials about a project that paid nearly $3 million to a company she co-owns. CBC News has obtained draft meeting minutes that contradict earlier claims Marnie Larkin played no role in the project that paid her firm. CBC's Bartley Kiefer reports.
Manitobans told us what they wanted to hear.
That's Marnie Larkin, the PC campaign manager on election night 2023. Larkin co-owns a company called Boom Done Next. It received $2.8 million for its work on a provincial daycare construction project. Boom Done Next was paid by John Q. Public, a company that managed the daycare project on behalf of Manitoba municipalities. Larkin's business partner Joe Liuzzi said he handled the daycare file for Boom Done Next. Colleen Sklar, John Q. Public CEO, said Larkin wasn't involved.
Not on this project, no.
Draft meeting minutes obtained by CBC News suggest Larkin was involved. The minutes show Larkin met in May 2022 with provincial childcare and social innovation staff. The minutes say they discussed the daycare project with the province. The province also confirmed Larkin was present at this meeting. John Q's board said Larkin was consulted in the early days of the company, but didn't specify in what capacity. Larkin said in a statement she worked for John Q. Public on a number of files, but did not respond to a request for comment about her involvement in the daycare project. Bartley Kiefer, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Manitoba's advocate for children and youth is devastated to hear a young child in foster care was taken to hospital in critical condition, suffering life-altering injuries. Sherry Gott says it is equally upsetting 2 young foster parents face criminal charges. Police removed 4 children from a home in North Winnipeg on Friday night. 1 other child also had signs of being assaulted.
It's devastating when a child is injured in the system. And I think that, it reminds me of the Phoenix Sinclair situation, when the agency does not go in and check to see if the children are being well cared for.
Gott mentioned Phoenix Sinclair. The 5-year-old was killed 20 years ago. An inquiry found the child welfare system failed Sinclair. Prime Minister Mark Carney closes out his visit this week to the UN with an appearance today at a global economic forum. He is also scheduled to meet with the Prime Minister of Jamaica before flying back to Ottawa. Carney discussed trade yesterday with senior Chinese officials, but did not meet with Donald Trump. However, Carney did attend a reception last night hosted by the U.S. President. Well, Jimmy Kimmel is back on the air.
It's Jimmy Kimmel Live.
Jimmy Kimmel made a point in his monologue of saying it was never his intention to make light of the murder of Charlie Kirk, which ABC and Disney insists was the reason they shut down the show last week. As for Donald Trump, in a post just before Kimmel's return, the U.S. president said he is appalled by ABC's decision to bring back the show, and he appears to suggest he will be taking legal action against ABC. You can hear the latest on this story and other national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. One of Manitoba's most storied coaches wonders how the Canadian Football League's sweeping rule changes will affect the lower levels of the game. The CFL is shortening the field by 20 yards and moving goalposts to the back of the end zones, along with other rule changes it plans to implement over the next 2 seasons. Brian Doby is in his first year of retirement after coaching the Manitoba Bisons for 29 years. He got together with some old high school teammates from the 1970s for dinner last night and says the rule changes were on everyone's mind.
All of them had the same response. Like, how does this affect everybody else? How does it affect the universities, the junior programs, and the Canadian Junior Football League? How does it affect high school football and all the little, all little rugrats growing up?
Doby expects amateur leagues will eventually adopt the pro rule changes, but some teams like the Bisons that play on CFL fields may have less time to adjust. Well, 2 preseason games, 2 losses, both by a score of 3-2.
Miller shoots. They score. Miller from the line, and we're tied at 1.
Colin Miller in the second period on TSN. Colby Barlow would add a second goal, but not enough for a win. The Jets fall to the visiting Oilers 3-2. And suiting up for the Jets for the first time, Winnipeg's own Jonathan Toews. It's been a while, April 2023, since Toews was in an NHL game.
Some good, some not so good. You know, it is what it is. Felt like I made some plays, and as the game went along, just relaxed a little bit. And, I think the conditioning is going to come, and the jump's going to come, and I think just the timing is going to be there too. So you just got to keep working at it, keep settling in your game, and trusting that at least I'm out there with really good players.
And the Jets next see action on Friday in a rematch against Edmonton. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
With your regional forecast now on CBC, here's Abby Adiemi.
Good morning once again. The fog is thick this morning across parts of southern Manitoba and into the Interlake region, with near zero visibility expected until late this morning. Now, once that clears, most of the province will see sunshine and warm temperatures. The humidity, you will definitely feel it in the southern part of the province later. Most of the regions warming up to the 20s today.
Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
And let's get a quick look at what's going on in traffic. We had an earlier issue. I think everything's clear now out there, right, Corey?
Yeah, I haven't heard if it's officially been cleared, but I know police have said that it should be cleared shortly, and this was about half an hour or so ago.
And this was the issue with the bus.
This is, northbound Osborne. There was a bus kind of up on the lawn of the legislature this morning. So, but it looks like it has gotten the attention of the police, and it is being cleared, might be cleared already. I actually would love to hear if someone's driven down and they've seen that or not. But if that's the only issue I've heard of so far. But if you do see something else going on, you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
Time for business news with Hallie Cottenham, who is here with our report. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
So let's start with the Prime Minister trying to make good of his time in New York at the UN General Assembly. What do you think the takeaway is so far?
Well, he told reporters last night that there are many possibilities for Canada, referring to the ongoing efforts to diversify our trade in the face of Trump's tariffs. Carney's meeting with CEOs and world leaders, and most importantly, he had a one-on-one with China's second most powerful man, Premier Li Qiang. They talked about the EV and steel tariffs that we've applied to China and the reciprocal duties that China has applied to our canola that's hurting Canadian farmers. Carney says he expects to meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping at an appropriate time.
To another story here, and we're all talking about it today, I think. A lot of the world is, at least. The much-anticipated return of Jimmy Kimmel. Tell us a bit more about your perspective on it.
Yeah, a week after Disney's ABC hauled him down, Jimmy was back.
Thank you. Anyway, as I was saying before I was interrupted.
In his monologue, Kimmel said a lot of things. You know, he talked about never being his intention to make light of the murder of a young man. Talked a lot about the importance of free speech. And after the first commercial break, Marcy, he said this.
Welcome back to Jimmy Kimmel Live. We are still on the air in most of the country, except ironically for Washington, D.C., where we have been preempted. We are off the air in Nashville, New Orleans, Portland, Oregon, Salt Lake City, and St. Louis, where none of my wife's family is able to watch the show tonight. So sorry, Aunt Sharon. Sorry, Aunt Maureen.
That's, of course, because of those two major affiliate owners who are still refusing to air the show. Sinclair and Nexstar together own 70 ABC regional stations, which is about a quarter of the network's affiliates. Stephen Battaglio writes about TV and the media business for the LA Times.
Both Sinclair and Nexstar want to get larger. And in order to get consolidation, in order to be able to buy more stations, they need FCC approval.
And your news editor talked about this. Donald Trump took to Truth Social saying that he couldn't believe that ABC fake news gave Jimmy Kimmel his job back. Then he threatened more legal action, saying that his administration would, quote, test ABC on this. Let's see how we do. Last time I went after them, they gave me $16 million. This one sounds even more lucrative. And he's referring to last year when ABC settled with him over a defamation lawsuit.
And finally, this morning, in your report, a country that once teetered on the brink of financial collapse is now the envy of the tax-collecting world. What are we talking about here?
We're talking about Greece. Used to have one of the worst reputations for financial accountability. Now it's one of Europe's most efficient at collecting taxes and cracking down on cheaters. And it's all thanks to technology that helps inspectors track millions of transactions, card payments, tax filings, payroll data, customs declarations, bank records. They're all centralized in this massive data center in Athens. Information pours in from surveillance cameras that are trained on restaurants and ports and delivery trucks and grain silos, and even take live readings from ships' fuel tanks. And then all of this information is crunched, and algorithms identify possible fraudulent activities or anomalies. And then human beings, inspectors, are dispatched to raid businesses that have been flagged. One example that jumped out at me, if the system knows there are, say, 20 cell phone signals active in a store, suggesting there might be 20 customers, but there are virtually no sales being reported, they send out inspectors. It's all raking in so much revenue, Marcy, that Greece was able to share 1.6 billion euros in tax cuts. Now, Greece, one of just 6 EU member states that had a budget surplus last year after running deficits for decades.
That's fascinating. Thanks, Hallie, for the report today. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay, thanks, Marcy.
That is Hallie Cottenham with our business news on CBC. 6:41 a.m. Welcome to Wednesday morning, everyone. We're at September 24th already. Thanks for joining us here. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Woke up next on 89.3 FM. Over 2,000 Canadian medical professionals have recently signed a letter calling for action in Gaza. They want the Canadian government to address the deteriorating healthcare situation there. They've listed several demands in this letter. And to tell us more, we're joined by family physician Dr. Dr. Yiping Ji. He is a member of the Canadian Medical Coalition Against Genocide and a signatory of the letter. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Tell me from your perspective, what is the most pressing demand that's in this letter made by the group of doctors like yourself?
Yeah, I think the most pressing demand is, as healthcare workers, we're demanding that the government of Canada recognize the genocide in Gaza and commit to actions that bring Canada in alignment with its own obligations under international law and the Genocide Convention, which is to prevent and punish genocide. As an international community, we have utterly failed to prevent genocide from happening in Gaza at the hands of Israel. But there's a moment here where we can do everything we can within our power, and for Canada to do everything within its power to hold Israel accountable for its crimes in Gaza, and to bring Canada in alignment with its own obligations under international law are very decent and basic things, and it's the bare minimum for Canada to do, such as stopping the weapons and arms from going to Israel with an arms embargo, such as sanctions, such as ending free trade, and also investigating Canadian institutions and individuals that have been complicit and actively participated in war crimes by Israeli military in Gaza.
You're also asking for evacuation of sick and injured children, right?
Absolutely, because as healthcare workers and our own colleagues, some of whom are Canadian and working on the ground in Gaza right now, are working in impossible situations when there's a lack of medical supplies, basic things like food and water, baby formula. And when these are the conditions that are inflicted upon an entire population and a population that is majority children, you worry most about those that are most vulnerable, including the young children that many of whom have already died from the forced starvation from the famine conditions. So for Canada to evacuate and to support the medical efforts for these patients is also the most decent thing for Canada to do. And Canada has actually failed to support its own citizens, Canadian citizens in Gaza, who have tried to evacuate, and also family members of Canadian citizens in Gaza. But we've also seen other countries actually be able to move patients out of Gaza to support their medical evacuation. But Canada has utterly failed in this regard as well.
I know that you spent time working in Gaza. You were a family doctor there in February 2024. I'll ask you, more about your experience in a moment. But I'm saying that because of the next question here, because you've been there. This week there was this long list of Western nations, including Canada, calling for the reopening of the medical corridor. So this is between Gaza and the Israeli-occupied West Bank, offering to provide financial aid to medical staff or equipment to treat Gaza's patients there. From your perspective, how much of an impact do you think that could have?
I mean, to resume this pathway that previously existed and has been significantly cut off because Israel is the occupying force and is collectively punishing the population in the Gaza Strip, to resume this, obviously this is a necessary thing and something that makes a profound impact on the lives that can be saved, that can be supported and cared for through such a pathway that Israel has choked since its genocidal war on Gaza. But I think we have to take into consideration, the broader context in which it's happening. Like, Israel has made the entire Gaza Strip unlivable and unsurvivable for so many people, decimating water, food, housing systems. And we know of so many situations where children long for death now. They would prefer to die than continue to be forcibly starved or be psychologically tormented by the idea of possibly being killed at any point by an Israeli airstrike. And when these are the conditions, it's making people obviously want to leave, and Israel will not allow people to come back. So that is, I think, the important context in which we also have to acknowledge these medical evacuations, that it does play into Israel's colonial objectives of taking over the Gaza Strip.
What was it like for you when you were a doctor there? I understand where you worked, the clinic in Central Rafah became, is no longer a clinic for medical aid.
Yeah, the clinic that I worked, the multiple clinics that I worked at in Central Rafah, they no longer exist because the Israeli military, advanced into Rafah and destroyed buildings, destroyed clinics. The clinic, before it became destroyed, it was non-functional and non-operational because it was being used as a morgue to store the multiple dead bodies from the Al-Mawasi tent massacres that took place over the course of last year, and still honestly continue to take place because the bombings are indiscriminate and go on people, internally displaced people living in tents. The clinics that I worked at didn't have basic supplies like antibiotics, Tylenol, until we started to prescribe them. But that is not a solution for a few doctors with a few suitcases full of medications for an entire population of over 1 million.
Dr. G, thank you very much for your perspective and your time on this. We appreciate your time live this morning on CBC.
Thank you for having me.
That is Dr. Yiping Ji, a family doctor, a member of the Medical Coalition Against Genocide, with his perspective talking about the letter that he has signed. The Canadian Medical Coalition Against Genocide has 2,000 signatures sent to the Canadian government.
Hello, Steinbach. CBC News is coming to town for a special live across Canada broadcast with me. I'm Heather Hiscox. It's Thursday, September the 25th at 8 a.m. We hope you'll join us at the Southeast Events Center. We'll have a live broadcast with a national spotlight on Steinbach, followed by a power brunch and a special Q&A session. So visit cbc.ca/Manitoba and go to the community section to learn more.
That's Heather Hiscox. She's going to be on our show actually live the next hour talking more about tomorrow's show in Steinbach. A lot of fog out there, issues across southern Manitoba. We also had a call to say around southbound Highway 12, really thick. So lots going on out there because of the fog. Well, from doctor to doctor, it's time for our medical column. What is oral allergy syndrome? For some people, when you eat a certain food, you can get this allergic reaction in your mouth, but nowhere else in your body. So sometimes this can be confusing for people who have it. Dr. Raj Bhardwaj explains.
Good morning, Marcy.
What is oral allergy syndrome? What does it feel like?
Yeah, so this is a type of allergic reaction that happens when certain fruits or vegetables or nuts cause itching or swelling in your mouth and lips and tongue and sometimes throat. But it's typically mild, but it's definitely noticeable. People say that it makes their mouth feel itchy or tingly. People sometimes say that, something tastes spicy when it's not. And it can cause some swelling and stuff as well, but it's more like having like hives in your mouth, little bumps on the roof of your mouth. It's different than, when you eat a ton of pineapple or something really acidic, like papaya or something like that, and you get actual sores in your mouth. That's just the acid and the irritation. This is different. This is something that, it kind of flares up and then it goes away pretty quickly, like, less than an hour after you stop eating. And, like I've seen this in my practice and in my patients and stuff. I even had a doctor friend. I was actually having lunch with them and they mentioned, we were sharing some baba ganoush, some of that eggplant dip. And that's not a spicy thing, we were eating that and they said, man, this baba ganoush is weird. It's really spicy. And I said, no, it's not spicy at all. And they're like, no, I think I have to stop eating it. It's making my mouth burn. And I was like, it really isn't spicy. And they said, no, my mouth is tingling and I feel like I'm getting like little bumps on the roof of my mouth. And I said, you just listen to your words and sort of what do you think is actually going on? And they're like, oh, I have oral allergy syndrome to eggplant. And yeah, that's what it was.
Why does it happen?
So it happens because of a cross reaction between the certain proteins in fruits and vegetables and nuts that are structurally similar to certain pollen proteins that people are allergic to. So if you have seasonal allergies, depending on what your seasonal allergy is to, then you can get a cross reaction to certain raw foods. So for example, if you're allergic to birch pollen, you can get this itchy mouth thing if you eat raw apples or carrots or stone fruits like peaches or cherries. People with grass allergies might be triggered by melons or tomatoes, and people with weed allergies might be triggered by bananas or melons or zucchini or cucumber. And just because, like if you say, oh yeah, I get an itchy mouth with apples, that doesn't mean that you will also get an itchy mouth with carrots and stone fruits and peaches and cherries and all that. Usually it's pretty specific, so sometimes it's hard to figure out. Now, if you consider that about 20% of Canadians have seasonal allergies, right? Pollen allergies, and up to 75% of people with pollen allergies can end up with this oral allergy syndrome, or what's also called pollen food allergy syndrome. It's actually pretty common.
What is the difference between a regular food allergy and an oral allergy syndrome?
Yeah, so this is the tough part, right? Is that there is some overlap in the symptoms, and the true food allergies can be quite dangerous. And so we want to really know, like, can we tell the difference and stuff? So one thing with true food allergies is that they certainly can cause local mouth tingling and stuff like that, swelling. Plus, they typically cause a whole body response. Right? So a rash all over your skin, a lung reaction that might cause coughing or wheezing or tight breathing. And the immune response can trigger stomach ache and vomiting. It can give you a feeling of like I'm swallowing past a lump or my throat is closing up. That sort of stuff is like true food allergy. But the oral allergy syndrome is much more limited than that. This really gives symptoms only in the mouth usually. And because it's a cross reaction to pollen allergies, you can sort of grow into or out of oral allergies, just like, people can be more or less sensitive to pollens in their lifetime. And the big difference is that if you have this oral allergy syndrome, but not a food allergy, then you won't react if the food is cooked enough, right? Because that changes the proteins that you're reacting to. So people will literally say that, yeah, if I eat a raw apple, I have this problem. But if I eat applesauce or apple pie, I'm fine. I never get this problem. And that's one of the key differences.
Your saliva triggers it, right? How long do your symptoms last?
Yeah, so the symptoms usually go away after about half an hour. And it's not that the saliva triggers it, it's the saliva breaks down the proteins. And once you stop eating whatever you're eating, it doesn't just continue to rile up your immune system like a true food allergy does.
Is or can be oral allergy syndrome dangerous then?
Yeah, so it's not usually dangerous. It's usually more of a nuisance. So, typically people's symptoms don't get worse with each exposure if it's only this oral allergy syndrome. But it is an allergic reaction, right? So we never say never when it comes to the immune system. So, so it's worth noticing, it's worth paying attention to any symptoms when you eat certain foods, because what we don't want, I think, is if we misinterpret or misdiagnose your symptoms and figure that all you've got is an oral allergy syndrome, but then you actually are developing a true food allergy, right? Because then we know that each time you're exposed to that food, your immune system response is going to get bigger, right? So if you get any of those signs that are outside your mouth, right? If you get the hives around your body, if you start feeling swelling in the throat, if you're swallowing past a lump, if your voice is changing, or you're coughing, gagging, throwing up, anything like that, those are all signs that you do have a dangerous allergic reaction to food, and it's time to use your EpiPen, call 911, things like that. That's why it's better to talk to your doctor about this, because usually we can make the right diagnosis with a good history, but sometimes we want to, maybe send you to an allergist, immunologist to really sort things out.
How do you manage it?
So most of the time it's about avoiding the exposure to the food proteins, right, that are related to those pollen proteins. But it's interesting that you might not need to avoid, let's say you react to, raw apples. You might not need to avoid raw apples year round, because when your pollen allergy is settled down, you might actually not have any cross reaction to raw apples. So some people say that their oral allergy only really flares up at certain times of the year, when the pollen that they're sensitive to is around. So that's one thing. The second thing that you can do is you can cook or process the fruit or vegetable, because that changes the protein enough sometimes that you're not sensitive to it. So if it's apples, you can, cook the apples, make applesauce, have apple pie, whatever. If it's carrots, raw carrots might do it, but if you boil the carrots enough, then that might be fine. You can eat boiled carrots. So that's one thing. And then you can also take antihistamines. We've talked about that. The non-drowsy over-the-counter antihistamines are fine. And then you can talk to your doctor about maybe, treatments to dampen your pollen allergy, because without the pollen allergy, you won't have the pollen food allergy syndrome or oral allergy syndrome.
All right. Thanks, Dr. Bardwaj.
My pleasure.
It's our medical column with Dr. Raj Bardwaj. Interesting, hey? All right, let's get into what's happening in the news locally here. It's 3 minutes to 7 o'clock. Heather's back with our headlines.
Well, the campaign manager for the Manitoba Progressive Conservative re-election campaign in 2023 met with provincial officials about a project that paid nearly $3 million to a company she co-owns. CBC News has obtained draft meeting minutes from that do contradict earlier claims Marnie Larkin played no role in the project that paid her firm. So we'll hear more about that. Also, one of the most prominent figures in Manitoba football wonders how sweeping rule changes announced by the CFL will trickle down to the amateur game. We're going to hear from Brian Doby, recently retired from the Manitoba Bison, but coached there for 29 years. We'll hear what he has to say coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
So we have this fog advisory in effect for parts of southern Manitoba. It does include Winnipeg. Really foggy out there. Can't see anything. If you're driving downtown, you're not going to see any of the buildings, for example. You can just see the lights, so keep them on. We're getting calls from the highways. Southbound Highway 12, Matt called, said the fog's so thick there. Also, Maria called. She said there's a dead deer on the road. Westbound Roblin between the Perimeter and Breezy Bend Golf Course. That's important because the fog is thick. So she says you might just come upon this thing, and she ended up driving over the carcass. So this could be dangerous for you there. So take care out there, everyone. And use our commuter line if you need, 788-3093. Don't believe us? Watch our YouTube stream. Brad's been rolling videos and pictures of the fog all morning. In the next hour of Information Radio, I should mention here temperature, 13 in Winnipeg. Today's high 24 once this clears out. And now in the next hour, we'll have more on that story Heather just mentioned. Bartley Kivas in with a special report. Plus, she's covered 2 royal weddings and 10 Olympics. Heather Hiscox is now going to be retiring, but not before she travels across the country doing live shows. Her first one in Steinbach tomorrow. Heather's going to talk to us live in the next hour. And then at 7:10, a local advocate who is autistic says Donald Trump's announcement about the link between Tylenol and autism is dangerous to people like her. We're going to hear why she wants to weigh in on this and what she has to say.
Today on The Current.
Jimmy Kimmel is not a talented person. He had very bad ratings, and they should have fired him a long time ago.
The comedian Jimmy Kimmel Show is back on the air, but the attacks from the Trump administration continue on media who criticize the U.S. president, the state of free speech in the United States, and what free speech means on all sides, coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Ithil Musa. Typhoon Gaza is causing major damage as it moved towards mainland China. The world's most powerful tropical cyclone this year has made landfall in China, and it's sending waves crashing into Hong Kong's coast. Several areas have been flooded. Taiwan has also been hit hard. At least 17 people have died there due to the storm. In China's southern Guangdong province, nearly 2 million people have had to evacuate. Laura Westbrook has the latest.
The world's strongest storm this year lashed Hong Kong with torrential rain and brought hurricane-force winds. Hundreds of flights have been cancelled, schools suspended, and many businesses closed as people hunkered down waiting for the storm to pass. Li Han, a tourist from mainland China, was visiting Hong Kong.
What I heard was the piercing sound of the wind in the early morning, a mix of wind and rain. I usually sleep deeply, but it woke me up many times throughout the night.
Flood warnings continued in the town of Guangfu in Taiwan. Heavy rain triggered by Gaza caused a barrier lake in the eastern county of Hualien to burst its banks, sending water surging into the town. Several people have died. Professor Ben Horton from City University of Hong Kong says due to the impacts of climate change, this won't be the last super typhoon.
To produce a super typhoon, you need warm ocean waters, and the Pacific Ocean waters, their temperatures are unprecedented.
Authorities expect that Gaza is going to impact tens of millions of people in mainland China. Emergency personnel are on standby and people have been told to stay home. Laura Westbrook, the CBC News, Hong Kong.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will get his turn to address the United Nations General Assembly a little later this morning. But U.S. President Donald Trump's comments yesterday about the war in Ukraine are still causing a stir. He said Ukraine can win against Russia, which he called a paper tiger, outwardly powerful but inwardly weak. But the Kremlin says the dynamics of the war are obvious and Trump is mistaken. Anna Cunningham has more reaction.
I really want to believe that this is true, says Svetlana Fetisova, pulling on a Ukrainian flag showing the image of her son, killed in the third month of the war. He is one of thousands of faces on commemorative flags blowing in the wind in Kyiv's Maidan Square. Finally, the country which is responsible for the balance of peace in the whole world will turn to us, she says. But Fetisova is cautious about US President Donald Trump's latest comments, seeming to back Ukraine. She hopes it's not a promise that will change. John Herbst is Senior Director of the Eurasia Centre and a former US ambassador to Ukraine. He believes Trump's comments are designed to get the Russian President, Vladimir Putin, to agree to peace.
Trump will have to put pressure on the Kremlin.
Trump's suggestion that Ukraine can win this war may be a tactical move, but NATO's former Deputy Supreme Allied Commander of Europe, retired General Richard Sheriff, says the US president is also handing responsibility for supporting Ukraine to Europe.
It sounds as if this might be more of the it's over to Europe, America steps back.
As Trump was speaking at the UN yesterday, in Ukraine, emergency responders tackled fires from the latest Russian attacks on Odessa. In Kyiv, civilians are dying, our children are dying, says Svetlana Fetisova, grieving her son 3 years on. Anna Cunningham, CBC News, London.
Prime Minister Mark Carney is standing behind his public safety minister, even after Gary Anandasangari was caught on tape appearing to question the effectiveness of the Liberals' gun buyback program.
I have confidence in the minister. He's doing important work. He's got a lot of important work this session of Parliament, including legislation on borders and others.
Carney's government unveiled its plan for the long-delayed gun buyback program yesterday. It will apply to more than 2,500 types of firearms. But gun owners and retailers in Alberta are not happy about the plan. And as Liam Bingening reports, Alberta's government is threatening to not enforce the federal law.
It's irresponsible. It's a waste of time and money.
Calgary firearms instructor Guy Jolet says 5 years ago, Canada's gun laws were hitting the mark. Now, with the federal ban and buyback program coming into effect, Jolet thinks what's happening is misguided.
It's to try to control the criminal action on the wrong spot.
More than 2,500 assault-style weapons have been banned since 2020. But now some owners will be able to sell those guns to the government before they become illegal to own. A pilot is launching in Nova Scotia, and a nationwide program is scheduled to come in the months ahead. For some Alberta business owners, the bans have already hurt bottom lines. Edmonton gun store owner Chris Skuberski says dealing with just retail buybacks is already a hassle.
It was confusing enough for me to do it as a business, so I think it's going to be even more confusing for the public to do it.
While Ottawa says the buybacks are voluntary, there will be a hard deadline where owning these guns will become a crime. But the province is saying it'll look the other way. In a joint statement, Alberta Justice Minister Mickey Emery and Safety Minister Mike Ellis said the province will not enforce the bans and direct local law authorities to other priorities. Liam Newbegin, CBC News, Edmonton.
RCMP in British Columbia say the mother and daughter fighting to save their ostrich flock from a cull order have been released from police custody. They were arrested yesterday for obstructing Canadian food inspection agents. The CFIA has taken control of the farm in interior BC. It says approximately 400 ostriches have to be killed to stamp out an outbreak of avian flu. If all goes as planned, 4 astronauts, including Canada's Jeremy Hansen, will blast off for the moon sometime early next year. And we're getting a close look at how NASA's Artemis II mission could play out. The CBC's Paul Hunter visited the Johnson Space Center in Houston and brings us this report.
So this spacesuit has been designed for the astronauts to pretty much survive any anomaly.
At the Johnson Space Center in Houston, it's the last best chance for NASA to talk up its long-awaited historic mission, returning astronauts around the moon. It's Media Day for NASA, ahead of its Artemis II mission set for early next year. On display for visiting journalists, boots and spacesuits, a mock-up spaceship.
Those are seats. These are seats.
Even moon rocks, real moon rocks. And yes, the 4 astronauts who will make the trip around the moon and back, the first such trip for humans in more than 50 years.
And so I'm proud to wear the flag on this mission. I'm proud that Canada's here.
Canada's Jeremy Hansen, who'll join 3 U.S. astronauts on the journey, underlining for CBC News the remarkable achievement this represents for Canada's space agency working with NASA.
And I think it's extraordinary that we're the second country in the world to send a human into deep space.
What a moment it'll be, he says, for Canada.
And if we're doing this, imagine what we can do next. 8 billion people on this planet, we have to learn to collaborate, or we won't continue to exist here forever.
The launch may be as soon as next February, and from here on in, the training for Hansen, the other 3, and the rest of the team now intensifies. The moon awaits. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Houston.
And finally, he's back.
It's Jimmy Kimmel Live.
After being suspended last week, Jimmy Kimmel returned to most ABC airways last night. The late-night talk show host's program was suspended over comments he made about conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Kimmel was emotional as he spoke about Kirk's death.
I do want to make something clear because it's important to me as a human, and that is, you understand that it was never my intention to make light of the murder of a young man.
Disney's Disney, ABC's parent company, suspended Kimmel last week, sparking protests and debate around free speech. But the move was applauded by those on the right, including U.S. President Donald Trump. Trump says he may consider taking legal action against ABC over Kimmel's return. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Idil Musa. This is CBC News.
Good morning, Manitoba. Someone left the smoke machine on. It is foggy everywhere, really foggy in downtown Winnipeg, and we're actually getting some concerning calls from the highways as well. So there's a fog advisory in effect for parts of southern Manitoba. It does include our city, so just take it easy out there, folks, on this Wednesday morning. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You are with CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. This hour on the show, CBC News has obtained documents which contradict a claim that a senior member of the 2023 PC re-election campaign had nothing to do with a contract that paid her firm nearly $3 million. So stay tuned. Bartley Kivas is in with that report. Also this hour on the show, if you're in Steinbach tomorrow, you'll have a chance to be part of CBC history. CBC Morning Live will air live from Steinbach tomorrow. I'm going to chat with Heather Hiscox this hour about her trip to Manitoba. So stay tuned for that and more. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells for news headlines.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba's advocate for children and youth is devastated to hear a young child in foster care was taken to hospital in critical condition, suffering life-altering injuries. Sherry Gott says it is equally upsetting 2 young foster parents face criminal charges. Police removed 4 children from a home in North Winnipeg Friday night. 1 other child also has signs of being assaulted. Well, the Winnipeg Jets have yet to win in the preseason.
Get the cobwebs off, kind of get themselves into sort of lose the summer hockey and get into the game.
Got to get into the game. Coach Scott Arniel, after his team lost its second game in the preseason, again by that same 3-2 score, this time beaten by the visiting Edmonton Oilers, and wearing a Winnipeg jersey for the first time, playing 18 minutes, was homegrown star Jonathan Toews. He hasn't played an NHL game since April of 2023. We're going to hear from him as well, coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Let's get into the actual forecast here. We're all talking about the fog, Abby.
Yeah, fog all over the place. Most of southern Manitoba really under that dense fog this morning. We're talking about stretching all the way towards the U.S. border. So if you're at the Modern Winkler Altoona area, you will be feeling this. And if you're on Highway 75, this is really covering a large chunk of that stretch. So look out for wildlife. Winnipeg also impacted. Their visibility dropping to near zero at times. So you should be prepared for sudden dips in visibility this morning. Now, across the rest of the province, we're talking about warm and humid conditions. That still continues, but the fog in the south will gradually lift and gives way to more of a mix of sun and clouds conditions later in the day. Winnipeg right now, 13 degrees. It's going to take some time before this fog clears off, but late in the morning, we'll see some cloudy conditions. The sun will poke through and would warm up to 24, and that's what we'll be seeing. Current temperatures down south, we're seeing between 4 and 13 degrees in a whole bunch of areas, and temperatures will be getting to the mid-teens in this region. While up north, we're seeing temperatures hover between 8 and 15 degrees, though conditions will turn warm to humid as the day goes on in the northern part of the province. But right now, it's all about the fog in a large chunk of southern Manitoba this morning, while clear skies we have in Brandon and Dauphin.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Let's get to what's happening on the roadway. Obviously, fog's impacting the commute.
Yeah, for sure. Got a call from Matt who said southbound Highway 12, the fog is so thick, he said you can hang 20-foot shingles on a 30-foot roof, which I have no idea what that means, but I thought it was pretty folksy and charming. I'm not a roofer. Maybe a roofer knows. I don't get it.
My brain needs to think about that for a second.
I know. He said it to us like a roof, 20-foot shingles, 30. Yeah, didn't get it. But someone does get it out there. Matt gets it. Westbound Roblin, also heard from Maria. Between Perimeter and Breezy Bend on westbound Roblin, there's a dead deer, and it's just one lane both ways. So essentially, that dead deer is on the road. She said it caught her off guard because of the fog. All of a sudden, you come up on it, and she just had no choice but to drive over it. You can drive over it, but it's a little bit scary to drive over. So heads up there. A couple other things to keep an eye out for. There was a multi-vehicle collision on Osborne at Granite, and that actually knocked down a light standard right there at that crossing. And the lights are flashing red. And as you can imagine, that's causing some backups, particularly northbound Osborne. So heads up there as well. And if you are driving through the fog, reminder from Beverly, she's seen people without their lights on. Turn on your lights. You have to actually, not just your running lights, you have to turn on your headlights, but not your brights, because that makes things worse. That's a reminder for folks out there. If you see anything else going on, though, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
Well, this morning we continue our conversation about autism. On Monday, U.S. President Donald Trump linked autism to the use of Tylenol during pregnancy and childhood. It's a claim for which researchers have not found any conclusive evidence. Trump also called for a re-examination of a widely debunked connection between childhood vaccines and autism. Jillian Enright is autistic. She's also an advocate, a coach, a writer, and the parent of an autistic child. She lives here in our community, here in Winnipeg, and she's here to talk more about this. Good morning.
Good morning.
What was it like for you to hear the U.S. president talking about autism in this way?
It's frustrating hearing old, long ago debunked myths and disinformation being resurfaced and perpetuated. It's kind of exhausting to just have to keep on discussing the same old myths and pseudoscience.
What's the danger of continuing to discuss autism like it's an avoidable or curable disease?
Yeah, there are a couple of major problems that come from that. One is that the focus really goes toward preventing or quote unquote curing autism as opposed to better understanding autistic people, our differences and our strengths, and that's where the resources, effort, and time should be spent, in my opinion. And also, it can lead to dangerous choices by parents who are afraid, nervous, who don't understand the implications, and then try to do things that might put their baby or their child at risk, rather than focusing on helping their child adapt to a world that isn't created for them, and understanding their child better.
Why do you think that some people continue to believe that autism can and should be quote unquote cured?
Because it can be really hard to be autistic in our society, especially right now, but it's always been, because our world is created for and by neurotypical folks, and a lot of people don't understand much about autism, and so it can be challenging to be an autistic person. And so then, parents don't want their child to struggle like that. But again, the focus can be instead on, the systemic and environmental barriers and issues that make life difficult for some folks, as opposed to trying to change the individual.
You talk a lot in your work about masking. What is masking?
Masking is essentially trying to hide what makes you different. With regards to autism, it refers to hiding your autistic traits to try and fit in with neurotypical society. For some folks, it can be a matter of safety, because autistic behaviors can be perceived as aggressive or inappropriate, and so they can, children can be bullied, at school or punished for behaviors that come from their autism. And so masking is a way of trying to avoid those negative repercussions.
And how often are people masking, and what do you say when you're trying to help people with your work with autistic affirming support?
How much people mask is very individual. Some folks feel like they need to mask most of the time when they're with others, whereas other folks only feel the need to mask maybe at work. It's very individual. When I talk to people about more autism affirming approaches, we talk about, embracing our true selves, our authentic selves, which means we need to learn more about ourselves because the information on autism out there is so conflicting and incomplete. And so first it takes learning about ourselves so that we can embrace our autistic selves. And then it has to be a gradual process where people feel safe and comfortable to become or to show their true selves with others.
For yourself in your own journey, you're autistic. Did you mask? I mean, I wonder how long, you're a parent now of a child teaching all these self-affirming things, but you think back in the day you wouldn't have had any of those resources even or around you probably. I'm just curious, what about your journey with owning and loving and being yourself?
Yeah, I didn't realize that I was autistic until my mid-30s. So I spent a lot of years masking. As a child, I was bullied at school, so I had to try and adapt to avoid those negative experiences. As a young adult in college and in first jobs, I had to mask in order to meet the expectations of peers, professors, of employers. And it took time to truly accept and embrace who I am and feel comfortable feeling like I don't have to mask most of the time, and also wanting to set that example for my son so that he knows that it's wonderful to be himself and that, he's loved and appreciated for exactly who he is.
We have this little picture we just showed on our YouTube stream that you gave us. Your son's little. How old is he?
Oh, that's a really old picture.
Okay. How old is he now?
He's almost 13 now.
What's been most valuable as you walk through these challenging times, as some of these tropes and some of the science, as you said, that it was debunked is now rearing its head again? What's been most helpful to stay positive for you and your son?
I think a sense of community, being connected with other autistic folks who are affirming as well, and having that community of people who understand what the experience is like and who are equally tired of, hearing these harmful myths being spread around. It helps stay positive. It helps find a sense of support and mutual understanding.
What's your greatest gift as an autistic person?
I think a lot of autistic people, and for me as an individual, I've never really recognized hierarchy. I've never been concerned with people's position or station in life or status. And so I think a lot of autistic folks are quicker to challenge authority or question authority And so I think that's really needed right now. People who are willing to go up against the status quo and question what the quote unquote authorities are trying to tell us. I think right now is an incredibly important time to have those skills.
Lovely to meet you and speak with you. And thank you so much for sharing your perspective on this.
Thank you.
That's Jillian Enright. She's autistic. She's also a local advocate, a writer and coach. She's also the parent of an autistic child, and the creator of the resource page Neurodiversity Manitoba. So she was talking about supports out there and the support systems in Manitoba that have been positive for her and her family. So you can check out their resources at Neurodiversity MB. You can find her writing and resources online, neurodiversitymb.ca. It is time for morning sports at 7:25 on our foggy September day here. We are starting with hockey. Jonathan Toews making his Jets debut last night. Good morning, Scott Regehr. Take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Marcy. He did, and although it was a losing debut, the Jets fell by a goal to Edmonton. There were positives to take away from it for sure. Toews played an impressive 18-plus minutes for a guy who hasn't played a competitive game in over 2 years because of the effects of long COVID. That's notable. So's the fact, Marcy, Toews won most of his 20 faceoffs, raced back at one point to take away a shorthanded breakaway from Oiler Max Jones, and created scoring chances for both himself and his teammates. Now, Toews is about the least gushy player on earth when it comes to talking about his performances. Here's what he said.
I felt like I made some plays, and as the game went along, just relaxed a little bit. And, I think the conditioning is going to come, and the jump's going to come, and I think just the timing is going to be there too. So you just got to keep working at it, keep settling in your game. And at least I'm out there with some really good players, so, you can feel like you can make some mistakes and survive a shift. And when you get that feeling, then get a little more confidence to go out there and make plays.
Toews alluding to his line mates last night, Gustav Nyquist and Cole Perfetti, making him unafraid to make errors on the ice. Sounds like a rookie's comments, not a 3-time Stanley Cup winner. And if Toews builds on what we saw last night, and there's a long way to go, of course, he could add a 4th cup to his resume this year. I'm not even saying early days because it's earlier than that. But I was excited by what I saw.
We're going to get a fan's perspective in the next hour, so we'll see if they agree with you, Scott.
Awesome.
All right, let's talk CFL. Everyone's weighing in here on the new rule changes in the league.
Yeah, the Bombers included. They were out practicing, getting ready for Saturday's game, and the rule changes were front and center. While some, like receiver Nick Dembski and offensive lineman Pat Neufeld, both Canadians, by the way, were taking a wait-and-see approach, others, like head coach Mike O'Shea and special teams coordinator Mike Miller, were more vocal in their displeasure. Miller, who holds the CFL record for most special teams tackles, said hearing the new rule changes gave him a sickening feeling, as though he ate something wrong. Hailing from Riverview, New Brunswick, he is also worried about how the new rules, especially field dimensions, will affect the youth side of the game.
From the grassroots aspect of it, a lot of those people have to go out and fundraise for turf fields, and it takes them years to build up the money. So if we're trying to grow the brand for a younger audience, you're going to want those players to be playing on the same dimensions as their national pro league. Is the league going to give money to all these small communities to build that turf field? Or are they going to continue playing the old brand that we all love?
Youth Sports, the governing body overseeing university-level sports in the country, released a statement earlier this week saying they were evaluating the ramifications of the new rules before they determine the best course of action. Remember, in 2022, the CFL narrowed the width of its hash marks, and Youth Sports never adopted that rule.
I never even thought about that perspective, but it's one to consider, yeah. Finally, in baseball, it looks like it's going to be a nervy last week of the season for the Jays.
It does, Marcy. After Toronto lost its game last night, while the Yankees won theirs, it means New York's just a game back of the Jays now for top spot in the division. Now, it would help if Toronto benefited from just a few more calls down the stretch. Remember, in Tampa, Nathan Lucas had that home run taken away for alleged fan interference. In Kansas City, ump said Dalton Varsho trapped a ball at a key moment when replays show he actually caught it. And then last night, George Springer drove a ball over third with the bases loaded that was incorrectly deemed foul. Here's his manager, John Schneider.
I thought it was fair. People in our replay room thought it was fair, and it's not a reviewable play. Sucks. It's 2 runs there, and it's 2-1 game, and I don't know if it's why we lost. Things can change over the course of a game, but from my vantage point, from George's, and from replays that we did have, should have been a 2-run double.
Shoulda, coulda. This is not the time of year for excuses, Marcy. It's the time of year to win a division title. With the slimmest of leads now in the AL East and facing Red Sox ace Garrett Crochet tonight, the Jays could heed the advice of a Boston poet. Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, "What lies behind us and what lies ahead of us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us."
Ooh, look at you being all profound today.
Coffee has kicked in. Well and truly.
Talk to you tomorrow, Scott.
Okay.
Scott Regehr with Morning Sports and Poetry. Still ahead, Heather Hiscox is going to be with us live to talk about her show tomorrow in Steinbach. Right now, your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it's 13 degrees, and once again, we are waking up in a bit of a fog. A fog advisory covering much of southern Manitoba. In Winnipeg, we expect to see clearing later this morning. Today's high is 24. Prime Minister Mark Carney says in every moment there's a crack, also possibility. Carney feeling optimistic about opportunities for Canada as he wraps up his time at the UN General Assembly in New York. He did not have a one-on-one meeting with Donald Trump, but was in attendance for the U.S. President's address yesterday. Manitoba's advocate for children and youth is devastated to hear a young child in foster care was taken to hospital in critical condition, suffering life-altering injuries. Sherry Gott says it is equally upsetting 2 foster parents face criminal charges. Police removed 4 children from a home in North Winnipeg Friday night. One other child also had signs of being assaulted.
It's devastating when a child is injured in the system, and I think that, it reminds me of the Phoenix Sinclair situation, when the agency does not go in and check to see if the children are being well cared for.
Gott mentioning Phoenix Sinclair, the 5-year-old was killed 20 years ago. An inquiry found the child welfare system had failed Phoenix. The campaign manager for the Manitoba Progressive Conservative re-election campaign in 2023 met with provincial officials about a project that paid nearly $3 million to a company she co-owns. CBC News has obtained draft meeting minutes that contradict earlier claims Marnie Larkin played no role in the project that paid her firm. Details now from CBC's Bartley Kivas.
Manitobans told us what they wanted to hear.
That's Marnie Larkin, the PC campaign manager on election night 2023. Larkin co-owns a company called Boom Done Next. It received $2.8 million for its work on a provincial daycare construction project. Boom Done Next was paid by John Q. Public, a company that managed the daycare project on behalf of Manitoba municipalities. Larkin's business partner Joe Liuzzi said he handled the daycare file for Boom Done Next. Colleen Sklar, John Q. Public CEO, said Larkin wasn't involved.
Not on this project, no.
Draft meeting minutes obtained by CBC News suggest Larkin was involved. The minutes show Larkin met in May 2022 with provincial childcare and social innovation staff. The minutes say they discussed the daycare project with the province. The province also confirmed Larkin was present at this meeting. John Q's board said Larkin was consulted in the early days of the company, but didn't specify in what capacity. Larkin said in a statement she worked for John Q. Public on a number of files, but did not respond to requests for comment about her involvement in the daycare project. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
And you can hear more from Bartley as he joins Marcy Marcusa right here on Information Radio in the next half hour. Typhoon Ragasa is now over mainland China. Millions of people have been ordered to flee their homes, with the storm delivering extreme winds and heavy rain. Earlier this week, Ragasa roared across Taiwan, claiming at least 17 lives. Jimmy Kimmel is back on the air.
I'm not sure who had a weirder 48 hours, me or the CEO of Tylenol. It's been overwhelming. I've heard from a lot of people over the last 6 days. I've heard from all the people in the world over the last 6 days. Everyone I have ever met has reached out 10 or 11 times.
Part of Kimmel's opening monologue last night, which ran close to 20 minutes, he made a point of saying it was never his intention to make light of the murder of Charlie Kirk, which ABC and Disney insists was the reason they shut down the show last week. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. One of the most prominent figures in Manitoba football wonders how sweeping rule changes announced by the CFL will trickle down to the amateur game. The Canadian Football League plans to shorten the field by 20 yards and move the goalpost to the back of the end zones, along with other rule changes it wants to phase in over the next 2 seasons. Brian Doby is in his first year of retirement after coaching the Manitoba Bisons for 29 years. He hopes some thought was given to how these changes will impact university, high school, and minor football levels.
I'm hoping that, at least part of the thinking process was in conference with amateur administrators, amateur coaches, amateur officials, just to get a broader perspective, because it does affect the entirety of our game. It simply does.
Officials at many of the lower levels of Canadian football have indicated they were caught off guard by the CFL's announcement. Well, shaking off the cobwebs.
Barlow was in front. That puck was redirected, and with 61 seconds left, it's a 1-goal game.
Colby Barlow in the third period on TSN as the Jets lose their second preseason game by that same 3-2 score, this time beaten by the visiting Edmonton Oilers. And wearing a Winnipeg Jets jersey for the first time, homegrown star Jonathan Toews. He hasn't played an NHL game since April of 2023. So how do you feel?
It's easy to get frustrated sometimes when you want to go out there and find the back of the net right away, and if you don't, then you can beat yourself up about little mistakes in here and there. But I'm out there with 2 good players, so for me the reminder is just keep focusing on what we're doing well and try and improve every game.
And the Jets do get a chance to do that as they have a rematch against the Oilers this Friday night. You can find more Manitoba news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Well, I'll tell you what, people are asking how foggy is it in Winnipeg this morning and across parts of the south. If I look right through our studio window in downtown Winnipeg, right past Abbey, everyone knows, you likely know, the CBC is located next door to the University of Winnipeg. I can't even see that rock. The big boulder on the front lawn that grads, when they graduate, they climb infamously. And when they start school, there's always this thing there. Can't even see that. And that's like right across the way. Tops of the buildings are gone, and we're getting calls from the highways. I haven't seen fog this thick in a long time, Abby.
A long time, Mercy. It is thick this morning. Much of southern Manitoba and into the Interlake region, it's near zero visibility. And that will be the case into late this morning. We're looking at foggy conditions for Winnipeg, the Pembina Valley, the Red River Valley, all the way down to the U.S. border. We will see these foggy conditions. So if you're on the Highway 75, take it easy out there and look out for wildlife. Winnipeg right now, fog and 13. That should clear by midday. We warm up to 24. Similar conditions. Pembina Valley region, foggy at 12. Also clearing. It's going to be humid at some point. You get to 25. The Westman region and the Parkland region, we do have clear skies there. Temperatures cool around 6 and 5 degrees. The Interlake region, dense fog really concentrated in the Gimli area right now. 9 degrees. That should clear by the afternoon period. You warm up to 25. The Par at 8 degrees. Also clear there. Thompson 6 and clear. Churchill 13. Just a bit of cloudy conditions there. Warming up to 20 later. We'll see showers tonight in Churchill.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
How's all this impacting the drive, Corey?
Yeah, lots of calls about that fog on the highways. Heard about Highway 12 southbound. Matt called to say it's very, very, very thick. Even maybe avoid driving down there. It's so thick you can't see much. As well, Maria called. She said the fog is actually impacting some of the obstruction on the road. So there's a dead deer westbound Roblin between the Perimeter and Breezy Bend golf course, and it's one lane both ways. So that dead deer is right on that westbound lane, and it sneaks up on you as you come through that fog there. You see it, and her only choice was actually to sadly drive over it. And she said you can, and that's really the only choice you have if you're coming up upon it. So just heads up there. If it catches you off guard, there's a dead deer westbound Roblin. And finally here, there was a multi-vehicle collision on Osborne and Granite Way. Those lights are flashing red. So 2004-way stop. Some backups are building there, particularly northbound Osborne. If you see anything else, though, going on, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
Thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
21 minutes now to 8 o'clock. You're on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. Well, next, she is an award-winning journalist with 20 years as a host of CBC Morning Live. You know who I'm talking about, Heather Hiscox. She's coming to Steinbach tomorrow. She's kicking off her tour, CBC Morning Live across Canada. Tomorrow morning, beginning in Manitoba, she'll broadcast from Steinbach's Southeast Event Centre starting at 5 o'clock. There's also the community event following the broadcast. Heather has had such a career. She's covered not only the Olympics, but I think the number is 10 Olympics, 2 royal weddings. She's also received the King Charles III Coronation Medal earlier this year. And she is going to retire. That's why she's on tour across Canada. She's online this morning to tell us a little bit more about starting here in Manitoba. Hi, Heather.
Marcy, thank you. We're doing reciprocal privileges. You were on our program and you've had me back on yours, and I'm delighted to be joining you.
Well, you're joining me for a better reason. I think I was on for wildfires.
I know. But we really appreciate it, and you were excellent.
That's very kind. You're excellent. You have been for your entire career.
Thank you.
Why are you choosing to kick off in this way? Why do you want to travel Canada?
Well, the tour just seems like the perfect culmination of these 20 years, because for 20 years, Marcy, I've been telling the story, as you said, of Canada and Canadians. And I thought it was the perfect way, as these 20 years, to take my leave, to figure out and hear where the story stands. So I'm sure you're talking about on your program, as we are on ours, this pivotal moment for the country, these moments of transformational change and relationships that are changing. And we're hearing from people everywhere about their hopes and their expectations and their fears and their frustrations. They're wanting to express those. And this is a final chance to listen to those and to do so face to face, because I've always had my most meaningful conversations, my most memorable shows, I think, on the road. And we're able to do so in parts of the country I've never visited before. I've never been to Steinbach before, so here we all are, and really enjoying it so far. Very positive first impressions. And then for me personally, you mentioned 20 years. It's a long time. And it's a final chance to connect with viewers, to say thank you for so many years of support. I'm calling this my gratitude personally, because I do feel such gratitude for the 20 years I've had as host of the morning show.
Why did Manitoba make the list? I mean, you're going to 5 places, so you're starting here in Steinbach. When you were considering, I mean, that must have been very difficult to choose.
It was. And interesting, we love the fact that when we were driving from Winnipeg to Steinbach yesterday, we passed right through the center of Canada. That seemed emblematic of what we were trying to do with this tour. But we chose Steinbach particularly because it's a place we feel where you can really see this moment of change and challenge that I was talking about. Steinbach is growing so quickly. The population, as you will well know much more than I, has nearly doubled in the 20 years that I've been on the air. So it's now Manitoba's 3rd largest city. And that is creating some strains as that kind of growth is elsewhere in the country. But we have rising prices, the trade and tariff war, the need for more homes and healthcare and infrastructure. Schools, for example, there's actually a new school opening tomorrow, the day of our broadcast, and opening early because demand is so great. So it's growing. That's a key part. But it's growing with a significant arrival of immigrants and newcomers, and that too is changing the dynamic in the community. So why is it working so well in Steinbach, and what are they doing to be so welcoming, really, truly, and how the community is evolving as a result of that? And that's part of the reason for Steinbach. It's also very much in keeping with CBC's priorities, because as you'll probably know, we have a new focus right now on getting out into the community for outreach of this sort, taking our programs out on the air, and also, as of this year, announcing a number, dozens in fact, of new small bureaus that are reporting on communities that we think deserve more coverage. And these are a lot of them. Many of them are in Western Canada. Steinbach is one in particular. Christopher Garreau, you've probably seen some of his coverage already on CBC platforms, but he's going to be part of our show tomorrow, and we're going to be able to introduce him to a national audience. So that's part of what we're thinking as well, Marcy.
The public's perspective, I don't have to tell you this either, but the public's perspective on mainstream media has changed a lot over the last couple of decades. What do you think, Heather Hiscox, that journalists need to pay attention to as we report the news in this environment, and also as we're coming out of almost, at best we would talk about journalism as being neutral, getting multiple perspectives, getting different sides to things, and I still obviously agree with all those principles. But in this environment, that means something else. So what do you hope that current journalists and new journalists up and coming keep in mind about how to report in this world?
Well, I think it gets back to the basic truth, the essential truth. The inviolable rule for me is always facts. Get it accurate, and I make that point very clear, and we make that as a obviously we stress that with our team. My morning team has many young journalists on it. I'm always reminding them of that. You know, people are looking for mistakes and are happy to tell you when you've made a mistake, even if it's the smallest matter of mistake. So what I've learned is it's always been important, of course, to get the facts as you know them. But even a little error of this person is in the studio and the reporter is standing outside in the location outside, or he's won 5 Juno Awards and in fact it's 12. Those might seem minor in isolation, but those are emblematic to people who would like to find fault and to be critical of the mainstream media of what they think is not us getting the story correct. So I just come back to that over and over again, inform, not inflame, and make sure that our facts are rock solid, because then people who might want to distrust, who are tending to distrust, don't have a basis for that.
At the beginning of your career, you actually got your start in radio in Owen Sound, I think like 43 years ago. Tell me a little bit about your radio roots. I have to tell you that, do you know why I remember your radio roots? Because you came to Winnipeg when I was starting at CBC, and I was young here. I've been working before, but I met you, and I remember we were talking and you said, oh, well, I started with a baseball cap on in those crack of dawn early hours. And then you stayed working early. But what do you still recall some of those early?
Oh, they go back even farther than that,
do they?
Marcy. How long do you have? My goodness. So here's the story. I am an accidental journalist. I was very academic in high school years and bound for law school is what I thought. But then what happened was, and you won't often hear this in an answer, in 1981 when I was 16, I had the great privilege of being chosen Miss Teen Canada. So that's not something that is really part of the a young woman's context today, but it was in my time. And so I had done in that year so much public speaking and traveling interviews that the radio station which sponsored me, which was CFOS, still on the air in Owen Sound, my hometown. Owen Sound is about the size of Steinbach, incidentally, about 20,000. So they said, would you like a part-time weekend job as a disc jockey? And I'd never even thought about that. I was, as I said, off to law school. So I did a great oldie show and a country show on the weekend, and they taught me everything. And it was the most wonderful apprenticeship. Hog reports, funeral announcement, newscasts, cutting commercials, spinning discs. I did it all. And then I went off to university at University of Toronto, and they would keep having me back on weekends and summers, Marcy. And it was a wonderful job going through university. But after third year, I decided, why do I think I want to go to law school? Because I know nothing about law school. I love this industry. And so I thought, where can I do graduate work? And I went off to do a master's in journalism and stayed on in the broadcasting industry. But it's wonderful that core love of broadcasting and of this work I feel to this day, 43 years later. But I stayed in radio. After I did my master's, I did many radio careers, radio jobs in London and morning radio, and eventually moved back to news and in television. But I love my radio years, so I'm happy to be back on the radio with you.
I love that. And now the hog's out of the barn, if you will, because tomorrow in Steinbach you might have to do a hog report. I think they still do those on local radio. So now that people know,
we're going to be in the Southeast Event Center, fueled by pork, so I better tap into that tradition, don't you think?
Enjoy your time in Manitoba. Thank you so much for what you brought to journalism and broadcasting, and I hope you have a great show tomorrow morning.
Thank you, Marcy. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Heather Hiscox, award-winning journalist and host of CBC Morning Live. So she's touring across Canada with her show. It will air live from Steinbach tomorrow morning. She's already there. It's on at 5 a.m. You can watch it, obviously, on the CBC network. You can find free tickets by the way to the event. So you can watch the show. Then there's a community event at eventbrite.ca.
If it happened today, find out today. That's the power of having the news in your hand. Get late-breaking news from reporters across the country, straight to your mobile device. Customize your experience with news from your region and what matters to you. Whether it's big headlines, detailed articles, live events, or on-demand video, CBC News has got you covered. Connect to the world. Download the free CBC News app or visit cbcnews.ca.
Wednesday, September 24th, really foggy out there. An advisory for southern Manitoba, and it's 13 degrees currently in Winnipeg. Once this clears, we'll have a high of 24 degrees, but the cloud cover is going to stay with us. Well, next, let's build on a story that Heather Wells has been reporting on in the news this morning locally about Marnie Larkin. She was the campaign manager manager for the 2023 Manitoba Progressive Conservative re-election campaign. CBC has obtained meeting minutes that show she met with provincial officials about a project that paid nearly $3 million to a company that she co-owns. This contradicts earlier claims that Larkin had nothing to do with a PC government project that paid her firm. CBC's Bartley Kivas joins us in studio to talk about the story. Good morning.
Good morning.
So let's start by reminding the listeners who Marnie Larkin is.
Well, as you mentioned, Marnie Larkin ran the campaign for the Manitoba PCs during the 2023 election, which the PCs lost to the NDP. Now, I spoke to her on air on election night that October before our decision desk made the call in favor of the NDP.
Manitobans told us what they wanted to hear, and we delivered on that. We have a leader that is full of compassion and strength, and sometimes has to make very difficult decisions for all Manitobans, and she showed that she can do that and stay strong.
That leader was Heather Stephenson, and here is how Heather Stephenson described Larkin in her 2023 election night concession speech.
To my campaign manager and friend, Marnie Larkin, and there are so many others who have played an integral role in this campaign.
Of a company called Boom Done Next, a Winnipeg consulting firm. Boom Done Next was one of the contractors on a $100 million daycare construction project involving the former PC government and John Q. Public. That's a company owned by 12 Manitoba municipalities. A subsidiary of John Q. Public built 22 daycares for Manitoba municipalities and one First Nation-led trust with the help of provincial funds. In April, my CBC News colleagues Joanne Levasseur and Caroline Bargut were looking into this project when NDP Education Minister Tracy Schmidt rose on the floor of the Manitoba legislature and announced her government asked the Auditor General to investigate the daycare project.
When we became aware of the irregularities of these contracts, we cannot, in good faith, ignore the political overlap. That's why we have written to the Auditor General asking him to investigate and provide reassurance to Manitobans.
According to Schmidt, as well as a summary of payments on the project, John Q. paid Larkin's company, Boom Done Next, several million for this work.
Marnie Larkin's company was paid $2.8 million for project management. We have some significant questions about what that $2.8 million was used for and how that contract was awarded.
And Schmidt said her government asked for an investigation into the daycare project. Finance Minister Adrian Sala explains why.
I think the fact that the individual who ran the campaign for the PCs last time has now been identified, their company has been identified as a beneficiary of that $100 million daycare program expansion, that they received $2.8 million is worrisome.
Now, you mentioned John Q. Public. What did John Q. Public have to say about this?
So as I mentioned, CBC News had been asking questions about this project for weeks before Tracy Schmidt got up on the floor of the Manitoba legislature and spoke about it. In early April, my colleagues asked Colleen Sklar, the president of John Q. Public, about the work Boom Done Next was doing for the company. Sklar said that work was handled by Joe Liuzzi, Marnie Larkin's business partner and the co-owner of Boom Done Next. Sklar said Larkin played no role in the daycare project. Now, after Schmidt made her comments alleging irregularities, we reached out to Joe Liuzzi, the co-owner of Boom Done Next. In a statement on April 24th, he said, "The suggestion that our role in this important work is somehow suspect in any way is disappointing and, frankly, disheartening." Now, Liuzzi also said Larkin played no role in the daycare project and described himself as the sole person in charge of it. In a statement, sole person in charge of it at his firm. In a statement, he said Marnie Larkin recused herself from this work entirely and played no role in the project. CBC News has since obtained information that contradicts this claim.
So let's get into the contradiction. What is the information?
Draft minutes obtained through a Freedom of Information request show that on May 27, 2022, Marnie Larkin took part in a daycare project meeting with 4 provincial officials, 2 from childcare and 2 from the province's Social Innovation Office, and they discussed the daycare project. The province also confirmed everyone listed on the draft meeting minutes was present at the meeting. So we reached out to John Q. Public about this. Now, Brad Erb, the chair of John Q's board, said Larkin was consulted in the early days of the company, but didn't say what files Larkin worked on. Erb did not comment on Larkin's presence at the May 2022 daycare meeting. Larkin said in a statement she did work on some files for John Q, but didn't specify which ones. And she too did not comment on her presence at the May 2022 daycare meeting.
So what is the political reaction to this?
Here's what NDP Finance Minister Sala had to say earlier this month.
I think the fact that it's been confirmed that she was present at the meeting undermines the story that's been told so far about her involvement in the project.
Was a member of the Steffensen government when the daycare project took shape. He said he wasn't aware of Larkin's involvement in the daycare project and said Manitoba needed more childcare spaces.
Our government was committed to growing our economy and growing childcare spaces. Manitoba's want childcare spaces. That was the government's focus. I was at the table when those conversations were had on growing daycare spots, which I think Manitobans agree is important. I was not there when those other conversations were being had.
What about the investigation then, Bartley, by the Auditor General requested by the NDP?
Well, there's no word as to whether that's happening.
All right, thank you for this.
You're welcome.
If you want to read more about this story, and of course, Bartley outlined how much reporting we've done in over a period of time to get this story and to learn more about this contradiction, please go to our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Opaskwayak Cree Nation, let's talk. CBC wants to get to know you a little better. I'm Felicia Adam. CBC's Communities in Focus is coming to OCN September 27th to October 1st. What do you want us to know about your community? What stories are we missing? I can't wait to meet you. Communities in Focus. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for details.
It's going to be a very powerful visit to OCN. Our show is live there on Truth and Reconciliation Day or Shirt Day on Tuesday. I'm just hearing back from some parents about one family's story. You know, a mom who says she wished she could have spoken to her father in Cree, but her son can do this. And so this is sort of reclamation of language, just one aspect of a story that we'll be covering for you on Tuesday morning live from Opaskwayak Cree Nation. So we hope you can join us. Well, next on the program, just ahead of World Report here, as you've been hearing throughout the morning, late night talk show host Jimmy Kimmel was on the airwaves last night. His return prompted a standing ovation from a studio audience that chanted his name. His show was suspended last week from ABC and Disney, who own the network, following his remarks about in the aftermath of the killing of Charlie Kirk, a right-wing activist. During the monologue, Kimmel's first words last night were, quote, "Anyway, as I was saying before I was interrupted," which got a laugh from the crowd. He went on to acknowledge a list of individuals, including past and present fellow late-night talk show hosts and people from other countries who reached out to him in this past week. He also named and thanked people with opposing political views, quote, who don't support his show or his beliefs, end quote, but still defended his right to share them anyway. And then he did get a little bit emotional.
But I do want to make something clear because it's important to me as a human, and that is, you understand that it was never my intention to make light of the murder of a young man. I don't think there's anything funny about it. I posted a message on Instagram on the day he was killed, sending love to his family and asking for compassion, and I meant it, and I still do. Nor was it my intention to blame any specific group for the actions of what it was obviously a deeply disturbed individual. That was really the opposite of the point I was trying to make, but I understand that to some that felt either ill-timed or unclear, or maybe both. And for those who think I did point a finger, I get why you're upset. If the situation was reversed, there's a good chance I'd have felt the same way. I have many friends and family members on the other side who I love and remain close to, even though we don't agree on politics at all. I don't think the murderer who shot Charlie Kirk represents anyone. This was a sick person who believed violence was a solution, and it isn't. Ever.
Jimmy Kimmel, part of his monologue, part of his show last night, he says he's fortunate to work at a company that's allowed him to do his show in the way he wants to for nearly 23 years. Now, still ahead, while we're hearing about Charlie Kirk again, after 8 o'clock on our show, it's now been 2 weeks since Kirk's death, and some say his legacy was turning more young Americans to conservative politics. We're going to have a conversation with a Winnipeg conservative about Kirk's message and why he says it resonated so strongly with young people and with him. Stay tuned. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells with our news.
Manitoba's advocate for children and youth says the latest case of a young child in foster care being assaulted reminds her of Phoenix Sinclair. The 5-year-old was killed 20 years ago. An inquiry found the child welfare system failed Sinclair. Advocate Sherry Gott says vulnerable children are still falling through the cracks. And one of the most prominent figures in Manitoba football wonders how sweeping rule changes announced by the CFL will trickle down to the amateur game. We're going to hear from Brian Dobie, the recently retired Manitoba Bison's coach for 29 years. I'll be back with more Manitoba news at 8:30.
Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Well, from football to hockey, after a 2-year hiatus, hockey superstar Jonathan Toews was back on the ice last night. We're going to hear from a Jets fan, who watch last night's game and will weigh in on the Jets this season. A fog advisory still in effect for parts of southern Manitoba, includes Winnipeg, really foggy. Out there. If you do have a traffic tip around it, 788-3205. The entire tops of the buildings in Winnipeg are just shrouded in fog. It's 13 degrees.
On cue. If you could take a test that would 100% guarantee you'd find your soulmate, would you take it? That's the question Brett Goldstein poses in his new movie, All of You. Brett will be here to talk about that and his role as Roy Kent in the hit show Ted Lasso.
But you swear all the time.
Yeah, but it didn't hold me back because I'm a footballer.
Q with Tom Power. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland. And on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
The comedian Jimmy Kimmel show is back on the air, but the attacks from the Trump administration continue on media who criticize the U.S. president. The state of free speech in the United States and what free speech means on all sides, coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Ithil Musa. Typhoon Gaza continues to wreak havoc. That is the moment a storm surge smashed through the doors of an upscale hotel in Hong Kong. It was battered by high winds and heavy rains overnight. Now, Gaza is over mainland China. There, millions have had to evacuate. In Taiwan, the cleanup from the once super typhoon continues. At least 17 people were killed there when the major storm hit. Philippe Leblanc is in Taipei.
The scale of destruction in eastern Taiwan has been far worse than anticipated, officials said, after a barrier lake burst its bank in Hualien County. Some geologists described the breach as a tsunami from the mountains. A bridge was swept away and streets filled with water and mud. Several people are dead, and at least 20 others are still missing. The water level rose so fast that we spent the night on the second floor of our house, hoping to be rescued, says this woman, who was taken to a city shelter. The Taiwanese premier is calling for an inquiry into the disaster response to figure out why those areas had not been evacuated as the typhoon was approaching. The super typhoon has now been downgraded to a severe typhoon and is pummeling southern China, where close to 2 million people were evacuated in Guangdong, still recovering from another typhoon that hit just a few days ago. Schools, public transit, and most businesses were shut down in Shenzhen for most of the day, but the city just lifted its shutdown. Hong Kong has also been at a standstill since yesterday. More than 60 people were injured by strong winds and high waves that crashed on the island. Widespread damage is being assessed. The Southeast Asian nations of Vietnam and Laos are expected to be in the path of the severe typhoon tomorrow. Philippe Leblanc, CBC News, Taipei.
Canada's outgoing ambassador to the United Nations, Bob Ray, says the power of the organization is its ability to bring people together.
It's the one place where everybody comes. There's nobody else that has the convening capacity of the United Nations when it's doing its job well.
Ray also says Canada's ability to connect with other countries is its strength too.
That, I think, is a strength that we have always had, looking at how can we lead on Haiti, how can we lead on the issue of children in Ukraine, where can we pick our spots to be effective with other countries.
Yesterday, Prime Minister Mark Carney met with the interim president of Haiti. Canada has pledged $60 million to help that country fight gangs. Most of the funding is contingent on the United Nations supporting the U.S. plan to expand a police mission into a gang suppression force. While he was at the United Nations yesterday, Carney also met with China's second most powerful politician, Li Qiang, the premier of the State Council of China. It is a high-level meeting at a time when Canada and China are trying to resolve their complicated tariff dispute. Janice McGregor is in our parliamentary bureau. Janice, what came of this meeting?
Well, it was interesting. Last night, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre jumped on his social media, pointed out to his followers that once again, Carney had failed to secure an end or even relief from the tariffs that China had placed on Canadian agri-food exports in retaliation for Canada joining the American push to block Chinese electric vehicle imports. But while it is true that a resolution hasn't landed yet, there is definitely something in the air. When Carney's parliamentary secretary joined Saskatchewan's premier for key talks in China earlier this month, Scott Moe was suggesting that a broader strategy may be in play here that could include, for example, addressing China's energy security needs, offering it perhaps an alternative to Russian gas imports. Carney mentioned clean and conventional energy last night. He talked about Canada's expansion plans for liquefied natural gas, as well as, he said, a range of opportunities in agriculture and elsewhere.
We had very constructive set of discussions which built on earlier phone calls, which built on exchanges between our foreign ministers, exchanges between our trade ministers. I will expect at the appropriate time to be meeting with President Xi Jinping, but continuing this dialogue with the Premier.
Carney said his foreign and trade ministers would soon be traveling to China. There is a busy fall summit season coming up for the leaders. This is all to be continued.
So what are the risks in this?
Well, remember, there's language in the revised North American Trade Agreement that says Canada cannot finalize big trade deals with China without consulting the U.S. And that's where things get really sticky for Canada as it tries to balance the conflicting and competing concerns between its number one and number two trading partners.
Janice McGregor in Ottawa. Thanks, Janice.
You're welcome.
We have some breaking news out of Dallas, Texas. 3 people have been shot at an immigration office, and officials say the shooter is dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Acting ICE Director Todd Lyons confirmed the shooting, but didn't immediately provide additional details. Dozens of emergency vehicles are lining the highway near the ICE facility. Stay tuned to CBC News for the latest updates. More than 200 mayors across Ontario now have access to stronger powers. They allow mayors to make unilateral moves when it comes to hiring and firing department heads. It also allows them to veto certain bylaws. Some mayors are using those abilities a lot more than others. And as the CBC's Jason Vio reports, it's prompting calls to get those powers removed.
I'm so totally against the legislation.
Windsor City Councillor Fred Francis called it a sad day for democracy when Windsor's mayor used a veto to override a majority decision of council earlier this year. Those powers also give most Ontario mayors the ability to hire and fire high-level municipal staff and requires mayors to put together a budget to be debated at council. The province says the powers aim to tackle issues like housing and infrastructure more efficiently.
I think it's sidelined city councillors to the point that city councillors have never been sidelined.
Windsor and Toronto's mayors use their powers the most out of all big city mayors, a total of 82 times. And near the bottom is London, Ontario, where Mayor Josh Morgan issued 25 mayoral decisions. Morgan says he takes a more collaborative approach.
It's just not worth it to go down a combative path with the council when you have the ability to actually do some pretty good collective decision making.
A new study released this month anonymously interviewed 32 top administrators who overwhelmingly were frustrated or angry about mayoral powers. Stacey Hushin is with Strategy Corp, and she helped conduct the survey.
This is where you see that shift from CAOs as impartial, neutral, objective civil servants to serving in more of a political role as chief of staff.
In a statement, a spokesperson with the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing says mayors know their communities best and municipalities are expected to follow the strong mayor legislation. Jason Vio, CBC News, Windsor.
It was a big comeback for late-night talk show host Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel Live aired for the first time since Disney, which owns ABC, suspended the show last week. It was over Kimmel's comments regarding the murder of right-wing activist Charlie Kirk. Steve Futterman reports.
From Hollywood, it's Jimmy Kimmel Live.
Jimmy Kimmel returned to late night to a 1-minute standing ovation. After the applause, this was Kimmel's opening line.
As I was saying before I was interrupted, I'm happy to be here tonight with you.
There was plenty of humor, but the most moving moments came when Kimmel became emotional. His voice cracked when he said he never meant to make light of Charlie Kirk's death.
You understand that it was never my intention to make light of the murder of a young man. I don't...
And there was even more emotion later when he talked about Kirk's wife, Erica, offering forgiveness to her husband's killer.
A selfless act of grace, forgiveness from a grieving widow. It touched me deeply. And
Kimmel did not ignore President Trump. He mocked Trump's comments about Kimmel having low ratings with a bit of irony.
But he had no ratings.
Well, I do tonight.
On a serious note, Kimmel talked about the freedom of speech and said comedians should not be targets.
The government threat to silence a comedian the president doesn't like is anti-American. That's anti...
On social media last night, Donald Trump lashed out at ABC for not firing Kimmel and hinted he might file a lawsuit against the network. Steve Futterman, CBC News, Los Angeles.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Idil Musa. This is CBC News.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC's Information Radio, live from downtown foggy Winnipeg on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. Thanks for joining us on CBC. I'll tell you what, it's bright and sunny in Brandon this morning, if that's your city, but across a lot of other cities here in the south, we do have a fog advisory that's been issued. Been getting calls from around Gimli and the Interlake areas as well, where that advisory continues for the fog. So we'll stay on top of that for you this half hour. Also this half hour on the program, let's talk hockey. Jonathan Toews returning yesterday. A moment a lot of hockey fans in this province waited for. He made his hometown Winnipeg Jets debut. We're going to talk about the game with a superfan. Also this half hour on the program, why one Winnipeg conservative believes that Charlie Kirk's legacy will galvanize more young Canadians to the right. He says that many of Kirk's messages resonated with him, and we're going to find out why. So stay tuned. That is coming up this half hour. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells, who joins us with other news headlines and analysis. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba's advocate for children and youth is devastated to hear a young child in foster care was taken to hospital in critical condition, suffering life-altering injuries. Sherry Gott says it's equally upsetting two foster parents face criminal charges. Police removed 4 children from a home in the north part of the city on Friday night, and Gott says she has many questions about oversight from the child welfare agency involved. The Manitoba PC campaign chair from the 2023 election met with the province about a project that paid her company $2.8 million. Marnie Larkin met with officials about a daycare project that paid the company she co-owns, contrary to earlier claims. We're going to hear more in our next local news coming up at 8:30.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Okay, let's get into this fog stuff. Abby, what do we know?
Now, Environment Canada just issued a separate advisory for Winnipeg now because of this blankets of fog
It's
we
really
have
thick.
out there.
It's
Saying,
usually not
yes,
this thick in the city.
It's not this thick in the city, but we usually have it on the outskirts of the city and the perimeter, but it is thick in the city. And if it's thick here, you can tell it's going to be really, really bad out there. So really take your time while you're on the highway this morning. And because you're going to be getting like next to zero visibility in a lot of areas. So once it's leaves this morning, we should see some sunshine and warmth. The humidity, we will feel it in the southern part of the province. Winnipeg right now, 13 and foggy. We clear up and then we warm up to about 24. The south, we're seeing clear skies in Brandon and Dauphin, but the Interlake region, it is also very foggy out there. So take it easy. Up north, it's kind of milder. We're seeing 12 degrees in Churchill at this time.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey Funk here now to talk about what's going on in the actual commute, the calls he's been getting.
Yes, lots of fog. We actually just got a couple calls now from another Corey about really, really foggy conditions on the north perimeter, reminding folks those running lights are not enough. You got to turn on those headlights to really be able to see and be seen out there in this thick fog. As well, heard about some update on that issue on Osborne at Granite Way. Right now, there was we got a call about there's a truck there. Looks like they're trying to fix those lights. The light standard was knocked down, and now those lights are flashing red. So as you can imagine, there's big backups northbound, and they saw that there was a construction truck there, maybe doing some work on those lights as well. One final thing here: westbound Roblin, heard from Maria about an hour ago that there was a dead deer on the road between the perimeter and Breezy Bend. And with that fog, it kind of all of a sudden it just kind of is there. And the only option you really has, sadly, is to actually just kind of drive over it. She said she was able to drive over the carcass, but clearly all around an unpleasant experience. And just don't let that catch you off guard. If you see anything else going on out there, though, give us a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
Well, it has been now 2 weeks since conservative activist Charlie Kirk was fatally shot, and in the days since his death, his legacy has come into question several times. Some remember comments made by Kirk as racist, misogynistic, and homophobic. Others have called him a martyr. There's a growing number of millennial and Gen Z men in particular, both in the U.S. but also here in Canada, who are turning to conservative politics. But it's a change. According to self-reported data from the Canadian Election Study, in every federal election since 2015, young men overwhelmingly voted for left-leaning parties. Now, that changed and shifted into 2021. A poll conducted by Abacus Data in late March suggested 41% of men under 30 backed the Conservatives. 34-year-old Michael Prisbell is one of those men that changed sides. He's a firm supporter of conservative politics, but he says it wasn't always that way, and he joins us now via Zoom. Hi there, Michael.
Good morning.
So tell me a little bit about some of the changes there politically for you. You voted Liberal until about a decade ago, you shared with us. Why did you shift? What shifted for you?
I think for me, it was mostly growing up into the adult force, workforce, and family life.
And what do you mean by that? What kinds of things were going on in your life that made you that maybe conservative messages versus liberal messaging, so to speak, resonate with you more?
Well, I graduated high school in 2009, and I attended university. And I think university at that time for me was more heavily left-leaning. And so a lot of ideals and teachings was taught on the left side in university. And as I started dating, joining the workforce, getting married, having a child, that all shifted more to the right as I more understood and watched the House of Commons. And I just got that policy understanding of where I kind of leaned more to the right than to the left.
Yeah. When you were in university, then, as you said, making this transition into adulthood, as everyone does at those ages, and then you said becoming a father, getting married. Did you feel validated somehow by some more of the messaging you heard coming from the right than the left? Did you feel more seen somehow?
I think that's the best way to put it. I think when I was a bit younger, coming straight out of high school, 20-year-old, I think we're innately born left. I think it's something that we're more progressive, more understanding. And as soon as you enter the real world, I guess in a sense where you have to pay taxes, you understand your money, you learn about the government, you have families, you start businesses, then you start to understand the economics of the world and how it's a dog-eat kind of world, how you have to succeed on your own 2 feet. And in order to proceed that far in life, you start to shift your values and becomes more to the right slowly over time.
I mentioned Charlie Kirk and his legacy and how different people are viewing him. What do you think his legacy is?
I think he's a martyr. I believe he had very strong conservative values. I didn't agree everything that Charlie Kirk said. I don't think everyone can agree with somebody 100% all the time. But I think he's a conservative martyr. And I think what he spoke for held within me. His assassination, I think, was awful. I think everyone has the freedom of speech. I mean, even what's his face, Jimmy Kimmel, also spoke negatively about Charlie Kirk, but I mean, everyone has the freedom of speech. It's just that no one has the freedom of consequences, right? And I think the consequence of death, I think, is unacceptable for anyone. I think, we have the law. I think that's the best way to go about, dealing with somebody you disagree with. I just saw recently one of our ministers is trying to pass new hate laws or hate, I guess, in this country, which, I don't 100% agree with. I think that's a bit of a freedom of speech constriction. I believe in persecution, persecution, if you're being persecuted, I think that's 100% not right? That's illegal. But when you start talking about this freedom of speech and whatnot, I think there's also should be some consequences if somebody disagrees or feels harassed or persecuted.
You're just because your mic cut out there. I just want to reiterate. You were talking about the federal legislation that's looking at hate speech laws. Just because a word was missed. You have also called Charlie Kirk, though you've just said you didn't agree with everything he talked about and stood for. You have also called him a role model. What did you what did you agree with him about in terms of seeing him as a role model?
I think on the terms of economics and government policies, I would agree with him 100%. I think on some personal values, I don't agree with 100%. At the beginning of time, I'm not quite sure what his religion was, and so I didn't agree with him on his religion basis. As myself am a Roman Catholic, so I didn't agree with him on some religion perspectives. But over time, it seemed like he did shift. But I didn't follow him throughout his entire career. I followed him mostly in his early and middle years of his career. But I could see that he was slowly transitioning his religious ideals as well.
Obviously, that there are the people that view Charlie Kirk differently, have concerns about some of the things that he said that have been described and have been anti-immigrant, homophobic, misogynistic, racist even. What do you say to those people, or would that fall into the category of what you disagree with around what you heard from him?
I think that everyone, especially Charlie, I think everyone in this country and in the United States, I think they can say whatever they want. In terms of homophobia, I mean, in Roman Catholic Church, it is what it is. But we can treat everyone with respect. People can not come to the same conclusions. We may have disagreements, but we treat everyone with respect. I think that's what Charlie was trying to do. And I think there's sometimes some misunderstanding where how he views the world, someone might disagree with. But I mean, if we all agreed with somebody, if we all agreed with everybody, then, life would be boring, right? You need to have a good a counterpoint to somebody else. So sure, I mean, some of the things he said, some people could view it like that. I can agree. But he's entitled to say what he wants and how he feels. But at the end of the day, we can't all agree on something. And his message, maybe some might disagree, but his message stood with a lot of people, so that can say a lot of things. That speaks volume.
Let me ask you about some people where the message resonated. You heard me talking, Michael, when I introduced you about some of the statistics around men specifically. Why do you think that Charlie Kirk and other conservative influencers are resonating so well with young people and especially men right now?
I think especially with young white men, especially, they feel a lot of resentment. I think with this, I don't think the left itself is a problem. Left, right, it doesn't matter. Everyone has their own views. I think it's more on this extreme side where you have also the extreme right and you also have the extreme left. I think you have a lot of these people on the extreme left, especially online, where they are putting down young white men, trying to get them to achieve certain standards that are just awful. It's disrespectful. So I think that these young men are especially on the internet and they're seeing a small echo chamber of extreme leftism, and it's pushing them further to counter that, right, to the right. So I think that's mostly what the issue is with young white men.
Can you tell me what you mean about they feel that they have to meet, I wrote this down, you said certain standards, like what? And I'm wondering whether or not that resonates with you, like a pressure is how you're describing this.
Yes and no. I think a lot of virtue signaling has been going on for the past few years, and I call them good boy points or gold stars. everyone can have their own opinions and hold them to themselves. I don't think everyone has to hold them outwards to show the world, oh, I believe in this, and the other thing, right? Everyone's scale is going to be a bit different, right? So somebody that's on the far left or somebody that's on the far right is going to have a higher scale or a higher value. Oh, you have to believe in this, you have to follow this, you have to love this, all these different criteria. And if you don't follow it or you don't accept it, then you're seeing somebody that opposes them. And I believe that a lot of young men are seeing this online and are experiencing this in life, especially in universities. Some of my younger friends are in university right now, and they're telling me how they're being treated, right, versus other groups of people where they're not sought after in school groups or in group projects, right? They don't want to be associated with them. They see them as racist or see them as somebody that doesn't believe in their virtue signals or whatnot. So I think it's this stigma that's placed on them by the left or the far left that's pushing them further to the right, even though they would agree with them on some topics. But just because they're seen as a white man or just even as a man, they're being pushed more away from people that they would normally agree with.
As a last question, Michael, what do you think the future of conservatism is here in Manitoba?
I think progressive conservatism has become the actual center nowadays. I think liberalism and just leftism in general have shifted further to the left, in my opinion. I think especially if you see this new progressive conservative party with Pierre Poilievre, he's definitely shifted his image, if you've noticed, from 2019 to recent, to reach a broader voting base. And so I believe that conservatism has gone a little bit more to the center, and the future of the party itself, I guess, is just of common sense. They value people who work hard. They value people who want to start their own businesses, start their own families, people who want small government, who don't want too many taxes and a variety of, fingers in the pie. I think that's where modern conservatism is going.
We'll leave.
However, but there's also a more extreme conservatism also brewing as well. So that's the point. That's the point, is that when things start to scale to the left, then a harder right also comes as well.
Thank you very much for sharing your perspective today. Really appreciate having you with us on CBC.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for having me.
That is Michael Prisbell, young conservative here in Manitoba. Of course, his response to the last question was around federal conservatism. We certainly will have him back on the program. 8:26 a.m. the time right now. We need to move along and talk to someone who watched the hockey game last night. The Jets back, Jonathan Toews back. 25-year-old superfan Braden Clausen watched this. He's with us now. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm well. How did Jonathan Toews do? What did you think of the Jets last night?
So they unfortunately didn't win the game, but I saw some great things. Jonathan Toews looked really good out there. Being with how old he is and having a 2-year absence, I wasn't sure how he'd be able to jump back into it, but he looked great out there, and it's exciting to have him on our team here in Winnipeg.
So let me ask you this, because there's a lot of hometown excitement, right, about Jonathan Toews coming back, except there was also people that were saying, oh, he hasn't played in a few years here. As a fan, do you give him some leeway to kind of ease in a little bit? You said he already looked good to you, but I'm wondering if that's something you think about as a fan.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's especially because he's a hometown guy. It's I definitely think we have to give him a bit of leeway, but the fact that he already looks good, and I think he's already only going to get better as the games go forward. I think it's really exciting for fans in Winnipeg.
How important is it that he succeeds? Like when you look at the Jets this year and what you're thinking about how the team's going to be.
Yeah, important for success. I think is going to be important for him playing in his hometown. He's going to want to do good for family, friends, and fans. And yeah, I think he is going to succeed here in Winnipeg.
The team captain, Adam Lowry, is going to be out for the start of the season. He's recovering from hip surgery. So in his absence, what's going to be most important for the Jets overall when you look at the Lions?
Yeah, so I think with Lowry gone, I think the leadership skills that Toews have will really fill that void for the beginning of the season. And then when Lowry comes back, it'll be an even better team of leadership for the Jets. But yeah, I think that with Toews' leadership, bringing to our team. I think that being that he led the Chicago Blackhawks to 3 Stanley Cups prior, I think that adding him to the Winnipeg Jets could really do some damages here and hopefully bring a Stanley Cup to Winnipeg.
Man, we just can't get out of the second round. Like it's like so
I know.
stressful when you're watching the playoffs, right?
So we have such good seasons, and then when it comes to playoffs, it can't seem to get the job done. But I think with this addition, we could hopefully see a difference going into the playoffs.
Where do you think Taves is going to need to still grow and improve? Obviously, we started by talking about this. You said he looked good last night, but where do you think you're going to see? Where do you hope you'll see more from him?
I think just getting used to the new team, gelling with new teammates, which I don't think will be a problem for him. One good thing is he's going to be playing with Cole Perfetti to start the season, and just a guy like Jonathan Taves, he's going to make everyone around him better, especially the young guys. And I think that's really beneficial for us, having the young guys learn off of someone who's so experienced and just knowledgeable and has such a good hockey IQ.
How are you feeling about having hockey back?
It's exciting. It's been a long, well, summer goes by too quick, but it feels like when hockey's gone, it feels like it's gone for a long time. So it's exciting to have it back.
Yeah, a lot of people build community that way for sure. Braden, thanks for weighing in on Jonathan Taves' debut with the Jets last night. Appreciate you.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
That is Braden Clausen with us, a fan of the Winnipeg Jets, watching last night as Jonathan Taves returned to the ice at Canada Life Centre. Former Chicago Blackhawks captain making his debut, but also this marks the first time the 37-year-old Winnipegger has played in 2 years. In 2023, Taves stepped away from the NHL due to health issues related to long COVID. Your news is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. In a bit of a fog out there. Winnipeg now under this fog advisory as well that covers much of southern Manitoba. We don't expect to see clearing until late this morning. Right now we're at 13. Our high today is 24. The manager for the Manitoba Progressive Conservative Party's 2023 election campaign took part in a meeting about a daycare project that resulted in a nearly $3 million payday for a company she co-owns. Draft meeting minutes obtained by CBC News show Marnie Larkin attended that meeting in 2022. The province also confirms she was present. This contradicts earlier claims from John Q. Public, the company that managed the daycare project, that said Larkin had nothing to do with it. NDP Finance Minister Adrian Salas says it raises more questions about a project his government has already asked the Auditor General to investigate.
The fact that it's been confirmed that she was present at the meeting undermines the story that's been told so far about her involvement in the project.
In a statement, Larkin says she worked on a number of files for John Q. Public, but did not specify which ones. She did not respond to requests for comments about her presence at the daycare meeting. PC leader Abi Khan says he had no knowledge of Larkin's involvement. Manitoba's advocate for children and youth says the latest case of a young child in foster care being assaulted reminds her of Phoenix Sinclair. The 5-year-old was killed 20 years ago. An inquiry found the child welfare system failed Phoenix. Advocate Sherry Gott says vulnerable children are still falling through the cracks.
One of the things that I am concerned about is licensing requirements of foster homes. Was that done? This is what my question is. Was there, foster care standards being met in this case?
Police removed 4 children from a home in North Winnipeg Friday night. One is in critical condition, suffering life-altering injuries. Another child also had signs of having been assaulted. 2 foster parents face criminal charges. Gott says it is too early to determine if she will conduct a full investigation. Breaking news this morning out of Dallas, Texas. 3 people have been shot at an immigration office, and officials say the shooter is dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Acting ICE Director Todd Lyons confirms the shooting but did not immediately provide additional details. Dozens of emergency vehicles are lining the highway near that ICE detention facility. We'll bring you the latest coming up in our next news at 9 o'clock. The death of a Norwegian trekker in Manitoba's north this summer is forging a continuing bond between Norway and Canada. Stefan Schotelvik's family is launching a foundation in his name. Schotelvik lived and learned from the Cree for a couple of years before setting off on a trek along Hudson Bay to eventually reach Alaska. He drowned last month trying to cross the Hayes River in northern Manitoba. Christian Dyresen, CEO of the Stefan of Norway Foundation, says it will hold camps in Norway and northern Ontario.
It is a way to fulfill Stefan's dreams and also build on his values and engagement and love for Cree and Canada. So it gives the family a way of making Stefan's life something that goes on through this foundation.
And Dyresen says Stefan's mother and sister, as well as a Cree man who was close to Stefan, will be on the board of the foundation. One of Manitoba's most storied coaches is wondering how the Canadian Football League's sweeping rule changes will affect the lower levels of the game. The CFL is going to shorten the field by 20 yards and move the goalpost to the back of the end zones, along with other rule changes it plans to implement over the next 2 seasons. Brian Doby is in his first year of retirement after coaching the Manitoba Bisons for 29 years. He got together with some old high school teammates from the 1970s for dinner last night and says the rule changes were on everyone's mind.
All of them had the same response. Like, how does this affect everybody else? How does it affect the universities, the junior programs, and the Canadian Junior Football League? How does it affect high school football and all the little rugrats growing up?
Doby expects amateur leagues will eventually adopt the pro rule changes, but some teams like the Bisons that play on CFL fields may have less time to adapt. You can find more on all these stories updated throughout the day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thanks, Heather, and happy belated birthday.
Thank you.
To you. We're benefiting because we're eating all the sweets in the office right now for Heather's birthday. All right, let's have a last look at what's going on in your morning commute. Corey's popped back in. Fog's been the story, still is as we end the show, Corey.
Yes, that's right. And also another story is happening at Osborne and Granite Way. There was a collision there earlier. Light standards down. Big backups, particularly northbound Osborne. I got a call from a guy who said it took 25 minutes to get from Pembina and Osborne to Osborne and Granite. So he says avoid that if you can. Avoid turning onto Osborne from Pembina. Very, very slow.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Abby.
Clear and sunny in Brandon and Dauphin, but we have fog in the other parts of the southern regions, Winnipeg and Interlake, having really the concentration this morning. But once that leaves, we'll see a mix of sun and clouds, and most of the regions will warm up, and it's going to feel humid.
Thank you, Abby. Chide Kuma, Marshall Hodgins, Carmen Ponto, as well as reporter Bartley Kivas, our senior producer Leif Larson, and also producer Nellie Gonzalez. A big thanks to all of those folks, the associate producers I mentioned, everyone working on the program today that had items in our show today. Big thanks, everyone. Thanks to our news department this morning, Joni Nicolo, Megan Ketcherson, and Heather Wells, and our live team, Abby Adiemi and Corey Funk, you just heard from, as well as Brad Lillies, who's been rolling all that fog video for us all morning. He's our producer of our YouTube stream. You can watch the show there, don't you know? And we hope you might choose to do so tomorrow. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for listening, watching, engaging with us on 89.3 FM. This has been CBC's Information Radio. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. The Current is next.